Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and welcome to the audio commentary for the Bernie photo book, aka my very first photo book. So you're listening to this now, and there's a bunch of different ways that you can listen to it, whether you download the entire thing and just let it stream in your ears as you go page by page as I talk and as you enjoy, or you could go by chapter, or you could look at the YouTube video, which there's not much to look at because it's mostly just the audio there. But the whole reason I'm doing this is so that you can hear in my voice what I was thinking at those times when the pictures were taken, and you can get a better understanding for why I did this or why didn't I do that. But I want you to hear it from me, what I was thinking. And I just think this is one of the coolest things that comes along with this book, is that you can hear what I have to say about the images. Now, before you open the book, let's take a look at the cover, and let me explain to you why I chose this image for the cover. Because when you flip the book over to the back, there is a portrait, and there's a candid image on the front of Bernie reading his notes before he was to go on in Iowa at our very first stop. And the reason I chose this for the cover is that I'm not really a portrait photographer. I do portraits, I capture portrait images, as you can see from the back of the book, but the whole point of my book is to give you an inside look at the behind the scenes images, and that's why I felt that a candid image worked the best on the cover, and this one worked really well. I even had people say, well, this isn't going to sell on store shelves. Like, nobody's going to look at this book and be like, I need to buy that because of this image, and that a portrait would be better. But the truth of the matter is we're not selling in stores anymore, and I thought that this was the right picture for the front of the book and that the portrait could live on the back. Now I'm going to go into more details about the portrait image on the back as well as this front image on the book when we get into the book and we get to that page. But I also wanted to do something a little different with the cover. Now, you can see the size of the book is pretty large, and I don't crop, and I talk about that a little later on, but in order to get the full uncropped image that's a vertical shot on the cover, we needed to leave this extra part on the left-hand side that is the nice, cool-looking fabric. And I didn't want to put Bernie big across the book or put my name big across the book. It just felt out of place. Let the candid image speak for itself. Put Bernie at the top on the left, put my name lower on the bottom, and then call it a day. So that's the story of the cover. Page 1, it says Bernie, and it has my name at the bottom. I chose to go with blue because blue made more sense than just about anything else. I'm a big fan of this style of blue. It just felt right. Green didn't feel right, even though we thought about doing green because that's one of Vermont's state colors. This blue just felt right, and I'm kind of drawn to blue. I mean, my favorite color is purple, but that wouldn't work for a book like this. And the direction I gave the designer, the book designer, was I want Bernie to pop. I just thought that was the best thing to do. It doesn't need to say Bernie photo book. It just needed to say Bernie. And then my name, a little smaller down below. Ooh, just checked. It is spelled right. Good. That's a good thing. We're glad that it's spelled right. And then my name is right there. And that just basically is the beginning of the book. Pages 2 and 3. Now, when we were putting the book together, we originally didn't have this 2-page spread right here. We just got right into the book, but it kind of felt like it took too long to get to any images. And this was one of those images that I really liked, but it didn't have a place in the book. So we chose to put it right here. Now, one of the reasons that I held off on this image and really showing it too much or sharing it is it kind of looks like Bernie is eating the Capitol building's spire, but I still liked the image. Now, to break it down a little bit for you, this was in Colorado. It was at the end of our 48-hour sprint. And around this time, when Bernie was giving this speech, I was kind of on the sidelines, lost for what to photograph. And when I was just standing there watching him speak, I saw Steven, who came out of the pit, who was shooting the video for the documentary, and I asked him what he was shooting, and he so happened to be capturing silhouetted video. And I was like, that's a great idea, Steven. I'm going to steal that or borrow that and go do the same thing. And so I went into the pit and started playing around with silhouettes. We had the perfect sky. The sun was going down. The sun was behind the Capitol building in Colorado here. And it just created the awesome sun stripes that are in the sky. The clouds look great. You know this is Bernie, and that's what's great about the silhouette. It looks like him. It works perfectly, and that's why we started the book off with this particular 2-page spread. I do want to say that there are no cropped images in this book. Now, that may not be important to everybody out there, but to me, it's important that I share that because I want you to know that every image that you see here was exactly how I captured it in terms of composition in the camera. Now, the reason I don't crop is I don't want to second guess every single picture that I take. Because if I did crop, it would be like, well, I like this composition better, or I like that composition better. In this case, just sticking to that rule of not cropping, I then just stick to the way that the images look as I capture them in the camera in terms of composition. Now, of course, I tweak all the raw files to get them to look like this and to be the final results. And that's important to always edit your raw files. But also, the audio commentary is not about going into super duper technical details about the images. At the end of the book, there's actually a table of contents that goes through and gives you all the technical specs. If you want to know what camera, what lens, what shutter speed, the exact time that it was taken, the aperture and ISO, that is all there. But I just wanted to share the information about not cropping because that's important to me to know that every image in this book isn't cropped. And that's also why the book is sized the way that it is sized. It's 14 inches tall by 10.5 inches wide. When you open it into a 2-page spread, that's 14 inches by 21 inches wide. And that's why the book ended up being this size. Pages 4 and 5. Now, many of you probably came here and were able to find the audio from this QR page code, but let me read you what I wrote since I have these words here. I might as well read them to you. One of my biggest goals for this photo book is to give you as much information as possible about the images and the stories behind them. One way to do that would have been via the written word, but I feel like hearing the story directly from me in my voice is more powerful. Below is a QR code that will take you directly to my audio commentary for this book. You can also find the audio at berniephotobook.com. Now, I love this QR code. I think the QR codes is probably one of the only things that came out of the pandemic that is actually a good thing, because before the pandemic, QR codes were basically dead. And then after or during is when every restaurant and every bar and everything went to QR codes. And so I just thought it was the best way to be able to launch the audio so that you could follow me throughout this entire book. Pages 6 and 7. This is where we have the foreword by Jane O'Mara Sanders, who is Bernie Sanders' wife. Now, a lot of people would say, well, why didn't you ask Bernie to do it? And the answer to that is I think it would have been too easy to just do that. And I thought that Jane would have a lot of great input to put in here for a foreword. So we reached out, we asked her, and what I'm going to read you in just a minute is what she sent for the foreword for this book. But on the left-hand side of the page, you have this photo of Bernie and Jane walking when we stopped in Iowa before the caucuses. They were just walking down the street, and it was a great moment to be present for, to capture. And if you're wondering if that jacket is the same famous jacket from the mittens photo from the inauguration, it is the same jacket. He had it with him while we were out there, and it's the real deal. So now, let me read you the foreword by Jane O'Mara Sanders. One of the greatest privileges of Bernie's 2 presidential campaigns has been the wealth of incredible photos taken of our supporters, friends, family, and creative artists, and the incredible events we shared. Photography has the ability to bring us back to a space and time and relive the feelings we had in those incredible moments. It's why at one of the first rallies of the 2020 campaign in Chicago, we invited Danny Lyon to speak. As a photographer for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, Danny is one of the most important documenters of the civil rights movement. He knew Bernie at the University of Chicago and photographed him during a protest against segregation. These photographs from 50 years ago are the historic record of a vital part of Bernie's story. We were lucky to have some incredible campaign photographers travel with us, including Arun Chaudhry and Hillary Hess in 2016 and Brian Giardinelli in 2020. They were, of course, joined on the road by some of the best photojournalists in the world, documenting our lives for nearly 4 years. In the days Jared spent on the road with us, he was able to capture some incredible moments of Bernie talking with supporters, from student activists in Iowa to longtime friends like Tim Robbins, Danny DeVito, and Cornel West. The photographs that were most special to me personally were, of course, of our family helping in the campaign, door knocking, canvassing, listening to all the speeches, and enjoying the depth and breadth of the experience. I know all of us will treasure the photographs of the adventures we had traveling around the country, meeting our supporters, and seeing American democracy work at a grassroots level. To Bernie, campaigns are about ideas and the power of people standing together in the belief that they can be a part of something bigger than themselves. You can see this in the pictures Jared took of Bernie's rallies in Venice Beach and Denver. Thousands of people gathered together fighting, in Bernie's words, for someone they don't know, for healthcare for those who don't have it, for college for those who can't afford it, for rights of immigrants and those who unjustly had their lives turned upside down by our broken criminal justice system. The legacy of the 2016 and 2020 campaigns is underscored by the dramatic movement towards the agenda Bernie put forward in our country. But for history, they will exist in the images captured, and for that, we will forever be grateful to Jared and all the photographers who traveled with us and the photojournalists who covered the campaign. Pages 8 and 9. So on the left side of the page, on page 8, you see 2 photos of me that I'm going to break down in just a second. And on the right-hand side, you have the introduction. And I'm going to read that to you after we talk about these images. So I felt that it was important to get some photos of me from the road and put them in the book. Now, we have a lot of video of me that Stephen captured for the documentary on the road, but there's not a lot of photos of me because, well, I'm not the main focus, except for when you have a big YouTube following and some of your followers so happen to be at a campaign rally in Venice Beach in California, in LA, and they end up taking pictures of you and sending them to you. So the top image is me on top of this massive ladder. I think it was like maybe a 18 plus foot ladder that was set up in the back of this whole rally. And there were over 10,000 people there. And this gave me a great overview to capture a wide shot to establish the entire scene. And the photographer, in this case, he's credited down below. You can see his name is Ryan Hartford. He was able to capture me up on this ladder, and I think that's an awesome photo. And I do want to point out that in the past, when I've had my photos purchased or given to a book for publication, how many times they forgot to put my photo credit in there. Well, we made sure that Ryan got his photo credit in here, and he also got paid for usage rights for the images. Now, the bottom image I just love because it puts me right in the mix of the senator and AOC. So you can see you've got Bernie in the foreground, or more so in the middle. You've got AOC right there. They're about to cross. And I have photos of Bernie shaking hands, and I have photos of AOC shaking hands. And you can see the crowd in the background and the security people and some of the other digital team. And there's me right there in a purple I Shoot Raw shirt with an afro using a Sony a7R IV with that Atomos recorder right on my camera. But that's just an awesome photo to have. And it's great when other people are actually taking, I don't even know if he was taking the picture of me or was he taking a picture of the senator here, but either way, I think these were 2 fantastic images to include on the introduction page because it shows me actually capturing the images or some of the images that are in this book. When I started making YouTube videos in 2010, I did so with the idea that it would lead to more people seeing my work and inevitably lead to more photo gigs. Well, that didn't exactly happen early on. What did happen is people started asking me questions. How can I take better pictures in low light? What lens should I buy? Can you critique my work? And quickly, I became an authority in the field. At that point, I didn't give up on the idea that I would get more photo gigs, but I did focus my attention on making fun and informative content to help photographers of all skill levels. The good news was, as my following grew, it allowed me to gain access to different people and places to continue shooting what I wanted when I wanted. Fast forward to August 13th, 2019, when I got a DM on Twitter from Brian Giardinelli. Bernie's campaign photographer, asking if I would be interested in making content around the campaign trail. After speaking with Brian for an hour and verifying that this was a real opportunity, I was connected to Ari Rabenhoft, Bernie's deputy campaign manager. The first thing I said to Ari on the phone was, "Would you like me to give you a little background on myself?" And his answer was something along the lines of, "Nope, I know who you are. I follow your YouTube videos and even purchased the Sigma 70-200 2.8 because of your review." Ari said, "We would love to invite you on the road to make content. Pitch us an idea." Now, isn't it funny how something can come full circle? There I was in 2010 starting a YouTube channel in the hopes people would see my work and offer me jobs. And here I was in 2019 not having to sell myself because of my YouTube videos. I pitched a photo story idea to capture the real behind-the-scenes story of the campaign trail. And on September 8th, 2019, I joined the campaign with all access for a 48-hour sprint across multiple states. This book shares the photo stories I captured across those first 48 hours, as well as a few more campaign stops along the way. As someone who owns a few hundred photo books, I feel like I have a pretty good idea of what I like about them and what I don't. So when I decided to go the direction of turning my campaign trail journey into a real deal photo book, I knew I wanted to do a few things differently. For one, I didn't want to do some small, normal-sized, unimpressive photo book. I wanted to design a photo book that allowed for big-ass prints. Expansive 2-page spreads not only show you the quality of the work, but also more fully immerse you in the moments depicted. But to me, there's more to a photo book than just the photos. I want to know more. I want to know what the photographer was going through when they captured that image. I want to hear in their voice what the photo means to them. That's why I recorded audio commentary for the photos in this book. I want you to hear in my voice exactly what it was like in the moment or the moments leading up to me capturing a particular image. I want you to hear the hows and whys. How did I get that photo? And why do I think it's important in the whole of the story? My work is about the photo story, not just one image. It's about a collection of images, when viewed together, telling the best story possible. My goal with this book was to share the entire process from start to finish. That means sharing information on how a photo book is produced, the cost involved with printing, the photo editing process, and so much more. Over on BerniePhotobook.com, you will find my audio commentary for the book, as well as hours of audio podcasts, behind-the-scenes videos with the book designer, and even a documentary video of the first 48 hours on the campaign trail. It's not just about the finished product. It's about the journey getting there. Thank you very much for choosing to take this journey with me, Jared Polin. Pages 10 and 11. On page 10, we have a family photo, and on page 11, we have the dedication that I wrote for this book. So let's take a look at the family photo. This was taken in 1982 or 83 and is one of my favorite family portraits that we have. Now, of course, I'm the guy in the middle of the frame that's younger with the curly-ish hair, and my brother has the bowl haircut on the left. We've got my dad there, and we've got my mom to the right, and we've got my dad's sweet Casio watch in there as well. I don't actually remember that watch, but I just love the rawness of this photo. I don't know who took it. I don't know really where it was taken. It must have been a holiday because we're all dressed in red, but it's just a really loving, cool image of a super young me, and obviously my parents are pretty young there as well. So I just thought that was the perfect photo to put on the dedication page, was to have this nice family picture. Now on to page 11, it says, dedicated to my mom and dad. I sit here writing this trying to hold back the tears. If there's one thing that can instantly make me emotional, it's thinking about my mom. My mom was the creative force in the family. She was the one with the Betamax camcorder in the 1980s, documenting every aspect of my brothers and my life. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of Polaroids and prints thanks to her desire to capture our lives. From birthdays to holidays to family vacations, we were always stopping for a picture. Now, family pictures went a little something like this. My mom would say, "Guys, let's stop to get a photo." And we'd say, "Again? Do we have to? My dad would say, come on, Sharon, take the picture already. Okay, everyone say, shit, snap. Yep, that's how it went every time. The biggest regret I have is not taking the time to teach my mom photography. She wanted to learn. She had a great eye, but I didn't invite her to go out and shoot. I didn't critique her work. I failed her on that front. You cannot change the past. You can only hope to learn from it. I know because of that regret, I've been able to help tens of thousands of people discover a love for photography. But no matter how many people I help, that regret will always be there. This book is dedicated to mom and dad, parents who encouraged my brother and I to dance to the beat of our own drum, parents who supported our creativity and embraced every curiosity we had. We were taught to defend those who might not be able to defend themselves. If that meant getting in trouble for doing so, so be it. They taught us not to be afraid to question things. They taught us, if you want something, ask for it. Because what's the worst thing that might happen? They say no, but then again, they might say yes. Thank you both for encouraging me to be who I am. Pages 12 and 13. Page 12, it's blank. It's meant to be blank, by the way. So let's go on to page 13. Ames, Iowa, September 8th, 2019. So you're going to see throughout the book where a new section starts. It's a new day, a new dawn. And no, I'm not Michael Bublé, so I'm not going to sing it for you. So I'd like to start each section off with the city, the state, the month, the day, and the year, obviously because we're chronicling the whole thing. And then at the bottom, I put a little bit of a lead in to the section that's coming up. And here's this one. And just like that, it was go time. The lead up to the senator arriving to the first campaign stop of our 48-hour sprint was filled with me fiddling with my cameras, testing different settings, and trying to pre-visualize the images I wanted to capture. The senator's 5 minutes out, I hear someone say. It's getting close. My mind's racing, my heart's beating faster, and my cameras are ready. 30 seconds out. I'm ready. My cameras are set. My heartbeat quickens. The final seconds are ticking away. The senator walks through the back entrance, and just like that, it's go time. My heart stills, my head clears, my focus tightens, the world slows down, and I start capturing. Pages 14 and 15. So this is the first 2-page spread in the entire book that starts the chronological order of images. Now, I like to tell my photo stories in chronological order. Very rarely do I switch orders. The only time I ever do that is if there's like a vertical image that needs to go here versus there, and it just makes sense in the layout. But generally speaking, I like to go start to finish. So this was the first encounter with Bernie Sanders, and the encounter really wasn't an encounter. I was waiting for him to walk through the door. And I talked about the prep on and deciding what camera to use, and how I was a little nervous to start with the heart beating, but as soon as he walks in, I'm ready to go. And that's when all the preparation that you've done and the pre-visualization that you've done leading up to this comes into play, because now it just becomes feel. So the senator walks right past me, and this isn't the greatest picture since sliced bread, but I thought it was a good starting point because he's walking in. I did have other shots of him walking in the door, but they weren't very good. And what I like about this is you can see that it's Bernie Sanders. You see the hair that's kind of a little messed up, and it just looks like Bernie even from behind. So he just flew in from Vermont to Iowa for this. So he walks by, and the next thing he does after this, he goes and he looks through the curtain just for a split second to see how many people were there. And I'm pretty sure there was like a mix-up in the dates and the information getting out to the students. And so it was a little less than they expected at the beginning, but it turned out pretty good. But here he is just walking back to what they call the hold, which is where he's going to just prepare for his speech before he goes on. So that's really that with this, chose black and white. I talk about this all the time. It's a feel. Sometimes it feels better in black and white, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes there's a lack of color, and that's why I choose to go into the black and white. But this was a good one to start off the book. Pages 16 and 17. Now, this does look like the cover, and you might think, Jared, did you crop the cover? And the answer is no, I did not crop the cover. I actually shot one vertical, and then I shot this horizontally. Yes, I like to say horizontally. For anybody's new here, I like to say horizontally, but I really mean horizontal. So this type of shot is super cool because the leading lines of the right-hand side, you've got the wall with those lines that are out of focus that lead you into the senator with the door open, reading his iPad, going over the news, going over his speech. And it's not like there was great lighting here at all. We just have a few crappy fluorescent lights up above him. The wall where I'm standing and tucked into is actually the entrance to the men's bathroom. The goal that you have here is you don't want the senator to see you. Now, we haven't been introduced to him, and I say we because Stephen is right next to me shooting the documentary video, and we hadn't been introduced at this point. That would happen a bunch of hours later, but he knew that we were going to be on the road. He knew we were there to capture images, and he really paid no mind to what we were doing, which is good. The whole idea is you don't really want to be seen and you don't want to make eye contact. I'm pretty good at deflecting my eyes, that if I'm looking through the camera and someone, my subject or someone that doesn't know I'm photographing them, kind of looks my way thinking I did photograph them, I kind of look off into the distance or check my settings. You kind of ignore the fact and don't make eye contact, because if you make eye contact, that's when, they'll be like, stop, that's enough. But in this case, I didn't end up making eye contact, but I love the composition, like I said. And what ended up happening is the senator looked over and Stephen was shooting video through the door, and then the senator closed the door, and then we basically moved on. But you know what? You got to get the shot, and it's all right. He may have seen you there, but it's not like that's top of his mind, because there's bigger things to worry about than what we're doing. And we stay out of the way, but we also know when to get the shot, because it's more important to get the shot than not, and have him look at you and be like, okay. I mean, he only acknowledged me a handful of times. Maybe it was just once later on in the book. I'll talk about that, but maybe it was once through the whole thing where he actually said something to me like, okay, that's enough. But yeah, other than that, this is still one of my favorite photos, and that's why the vertical ended up on the cover. Pages 18 and 19. Yeah, you're going to see a lot of 2-page spreads in this book. That's because I like immersive images. I want you to just feel like you're there. I didn't want that dinky book, like I said, but this is a photo of the senator leaving basically where he was in the photo before, going over to what's called a clutch. A clutch is where he meets with a bunch of supporters or anybody that has questions. They're handpicked, and in this case, they were people from the college, because we were in Iowa, and so there was a room of the college students waiting to ask questions, and the senator was walking over. You can see that he has his notes in his hands. This is a good point to say that this is where that new camera I was using at the time, the Sony a7R4, has something called IAF and lock-on tracking, which basically picks up the person's eye that you want and allows you to work on composition, even though I'm a little peeved that his foot is basically touching the bottom of the frame. That's something that I generally don't screw up too bad. I don't like to cut things off from a photographic standpoint. Most people looking at it won't ever be like, oh, that's terrible. It's just one of those things that I noticed. But the technology in this camera definitely helped me focus on, being able to either walk backwards or quickly get a shot and know that it was going to be in focus. Whereas in the past, it was much more difficult to react quickly and move those focusing points. Something interesting here is if you look over to the left-hand side of the frame, even further than where the two staffers are standing, that is the bathroom area that I was standing in, the far left one, and leaning down and crouched down to get the shot. And those tiles on the corner were the tiles that were leading lines that perfectly led you to the senator. So it's just cool that you can dig in deeper and see what's in the background of shots. And that's another reason the pictures are so big, is so you can see what's going on throughout the frame. And just, from time to time, don't miss what's going on in the background, because there's a lot of stories that also go on in the background. Pages 20 and 21. Now, the first thing you notice on this page is that there is a white border. We did that on purpose. And the reason is, you see that gutter in the middle where it folds? We didn't want the gutter running through the senator's face and splitting that in two. And so that's why throughout the book, you're going to see we went down a little bit. Now, that's not cropping the image. That's just making the image slightly smaller and leaving a white border. Plus, it also helps with your mind so that you're not just looking at 2-page spread, full bleed, full bleed, full bleed. It just, your brain gets tired of that. And so when you change it up, it just feels slightly better. And so that's why there's that white border. I just wanted to explain that real quick. Now, this is inside of the clutch. It's just a generic room, really terrible lighting, chairs set up in a circle, and you've got the senator sitting right in the middle. What I like to do with photography is use out of focus areas to draw you into the subject. And that's exactly what's done here. You've got a person out of focus on the left, you got a person out of focus on the right, but they're perfectly framing the senator who's sitting there comfortably right in the middle. Now, the cool thing about the clutch is that these are just college students, and they're not told what they can ask. They can ask whatever they want. The senator never puts a restriction on anybody. He loves the open dialogue. And that was what was cool to listen to, is he wasn't afraid to counter back if a student said something, and to basically pass on education, not in a demeaning way at all, more in like, all right, but here's how it actually works. And I kind of agree with you. This isn't right. Or I disagree in this situation. Here's why. And that's was very interesting to see these personal interactions between the senator and just regular college kids. And yeah, like I said, not great lighting, but this shot totally works out. And I love the wide aspect of it, but you're drawn right in to the senator in the middle. Pages 22 and 23. So after the clutch, the senator takes some photos with the students, and then he goes back to the hold, and the students walk down this area and past us, and then they go back out into the area where the rally is happening. Now, I'm thinking I want to get a walking shot of the senator. I'm a big fan of getting pictures of, moving from point A to point B if it could be interesting. And I knew that the senator would be walking down this way and then going out and around to basically go give his speech. And so we have the open door. One door is open, the other door is closed. Again, natural frames. I'm always looking for natural frames. In this case, when the senator starts walking, I lock my focus on him, not on Will. Will is the guy in the front. He's what was called the body man. He's basically like a Secret Service person, but not a Secret Service person. He's a body man. He protects and makes sure that everything's fine. So he's observing what's going on. And so my goal is to get the senator here in focus. That's why I focused on him. But also when you look at the feet where how the senator is walking, you like to get photos of people walking when that heel and foot, the foot's up a little bit, but the heel's just going down. There's always a specific timing that you can't get perfect every time. That's why you snap a couple of photos here and there when they're walking, but you want to get a specific type of walk. It just feels better and looks better. And so you'll see throughout the book, I have many that look good. There may be one or two that it's what I had, so it may not be the best. But in this case, we've got the natural frame, draws you into the senator walking. I don't even think he's looking at me here. He's just concentrating. He's got his speech in the one hand. And if you look to the far right, you see a camera sticking out and a hand. I'm pretty sure that's Steven's hand holding the camera. Looks like he's shooting through the glass to get video of the senator. But everywhere where I was, basically Steven was not far away because he's trying to get footage of me. He was trying to get footage for the documentary that worked best in the scenes that he was shooting. And also, if you've seen the documentary, you see through my camera lens, because I have what's called an Atomos recorder on top of my camera that allows me to take the feed from my electronic viewfinder, which is what I'm seeing, and record it so that it basically takes you right into the situation, right inside of my camera. So you see exactly what I was seeing. You see when I take the pictures. And that's, to me, one of the coolest things with the new technologies that we have, is that you can go right inside the camera to see the moments like this that I'm capturing. Pages 24 and 25. So right here, the senator is just waiting to be introduced. There's someone else on stage talking about what's going on in the campaign and rallying, getting everybody riled up for the senator to come out. Here, I like that you can see that he's taking a step to the left to look out between the curtains to see what's going on out there. A thing that you see all the time with him, you see his hands clutched behind his back, generally holding his folder, which has his stump speech. And you'll see that time and time again throughout this entire book, because that's just one of the refrains that he went back to every time he was standing. At this point, I still have not talked to the senator. He hasn't acknowledged that I'm there. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing that he hasn't acknowledged me, because my goal is basically not to be seen, even though it's not easy to miss me when I have an afro and my camera bag and my I Shoot Raw shirt and these massive biceps that you can't see right now. He still didn't acknowledge me, which is fine. That's what I like. That just means I'm not being a distraction. I'm also not overdoing it. I don't step in front and get in his eyesight to try and steal an image that I really don't need. I get what I need, and then I move on. And also, it doesn't hurt that the camera was pretty much silent. It wasn't fully silent, but the shutter in it was pretty darn quiet that it wouldn't become a distraction if I took 3 or 4 pictures quickly, and that's important to not be a distraction. Pages 26 and 27. This is the senator going over his stump speech. It's probably a speech that he's given 100 times before, but he seems to just go over it while he's waiting. This is that quiet, contemplative time right before you go on. And anybody that's ever given a speech or was getting prepared for a sporting event or anything, you know there's that quiet focus right before you start. And that is what he's doing right here. And that's what he was going through. What I really like about the image and what's going through my mind is that it's just he and I. Yeah, there's a bunch of people behind me, but in the image, you can't see that. So it feels like it's super personal. It feels like it's just the two of us there. I kind of love that you can read the sign, the warning sign on the wall. It's not the best scene in the world, but that's what this stuff is. This is photojournalism. You shoot where you are and you try to tell the best story possible. And also going through my mind at this point is, this is a U.S. senator. This is someone running to be the president of the United States. And I'm right here, an arm's length away, doing what I love to do. And so my brain goes to, well, what if he becomes president? Would I have an opportunity to be the president's photographer? Would I even take it if I was offered it? And the answer is probably yes, but obviously that didn't happen. But that is the thought that was going through my mind throughout this entire process. Pages 28 and 29. Now, I noticed early on that there was a split in the curtain because that's where people were walking through. And so in my brain, I said, I want to try and get the senator walking through this, walking out. I love getting the walking out shots. I like getting the walking shots in between, and I like getting someone coming back through the curtain like this. It helps build a photo story. And I always tell people I like to look for 4 things when I'm telling photo stories: the wides, the mediums, the tights, and the details. And when you can capture all of those things, you can tell a more well-rounded story. And sometimes you can get a tight shot, but it doesn't fit, right? It just doesn't fit if you don't have context. And so that's what I mean by the wides. The wides establish a scene and help you understand where you're at so that you can throw in a tighter image and not be like, well, where was this? And have it not make any sense. In this case, I shot a little wider. I was prepared because I knew he was going to walk through here. And so as soon as the curtain split and he started to walk, I shot off about 2 or 3 photos, got the shot that I needed, and then got prepared to get some poses of him up giving the speech. Pages 30 and 31. So this is what's on the other side of the curtain. This is where they actually do rodeos there. So that's why there's dirt on the ground. The white picket fences, I don't know why that became the barricade, but it is what it is. This is not one of my favorite shots in the book, but it's important to be in there because it's a wide shot that establishes the scene. So in the image before, he's walking through the curtain. Now you see where he was walking and where he's standing. And it's kind of interesting because every stump speech is different. Every stop is different. It's not always glamorous. It could be someone's house. It could be a massive sports stadium. It can be a massive venue. It could be a park somewhere. And in this case, we're in this place that they do rodeos. And I just like the wide aspect of it. So you can see he's on the left giving the speech. You've got supporters and then maybe not a supporter in the kid who has the NRA hat on. You can actually see that he has a body cam on as well that he's filming. I guess he was worried that maybe something would happen to him if he's there. He might as well wear his NRA hat and wear the body cam, which is perfectly fine. At some point when the senator's going around and shaking hands and taking selfies, he does stop with this kid and they have a discussion. I don't know what they were saying, but the senator started to move on, and then he came back to say something. I still don't know what they were saying. But yeah, establishing the wide angle, I'm thinking I need to get the senator in this shot with the people to show the scene, as well as get the American flag in the background. That's one of those staple things that campaigns do, is they place imagery so that you can, get a shot of the senator and have him standing there with the flag in the background. It's all about imagery for these guys. So they're trying to paint the best picture, and then I'm there trying to capture the best picture. Pages 32 and 33. Now you see what I was going for with the split curtains. Because he was walking through it before, I was like, ooh, we need to peek through the curtains to get a shot of him up on stage. You see the white picket fences, you see him speaking, and I waited till he had his hand up in the air. You're always looking for movement. And if you listen back to press conferences with presidents in the past, more so because a lot of people are shooting silent these days, anytime there's movement, or even in a sports, whenever a coach is speaking or something, or an athlete speaking, anytime there's a hand movement or someone reaches to wipe sweat from their brow or does anything, that's when the photographers start shooting, because they're looking for something that's just not someone standing there or someone just sitting there speaking. So when the senator puts his hand up or moves, that's when I start to shoot. And I will let you in on a little secret here, is I had to play with the curtain a little bit to get it to fall the way that I wanted it to fall. It's also possible that I had my hand underneath the frame trying to keep the curtain open just the right amount to get the shot. Sometimes you need to do that. And that's, again, I talk about natural frames. We have the curtain split, and that's creating a natural frame that draws you into a subject and creates dimension. Remember, photography is a 2D medium. It's flat. And if you can create dimension with your composition, then you're doing a great job. Pages 34 and 35. Page 34 is one of my favorite pages in this book. It's blank. It's not really my favorite page, but anyway, let me read you what is on page 35. The behind-the-scenes moments in the first few pages are what I live for. I want all access. To be honest, I need all access to tell the best photo story possible, and thankfully, I had it. With that access, you might be wondering what's going through my mind when I'm that close to the senator not long after he first walked through the back door. The truth of the matter is, I'm hyper-focused on finding the best angles, the best moments, and capturing them. I like to explain it by saying, the world around me seems to be moving in slow motion, but I'm able to move through it at regular speed. I see the moments happening before they actually happen, which allows me to capture them when they finally present themselves. Was the senator distracted by me being there? The quick answer is no. Even though we hadn't met yet or been introduced, that happened a few hours later with a brief handshake, he stayed focused on his speech, and I stayed focused on capturing images. There's a question I get asked all the time. How do you decide which images are going to be black and white? As a photojournalist, there's something classic about a black and white photo. Sometimes background colors are distracting and take your focus away from where it's intended to be. Other times, the scene is simply void of color. But most times, it comes down to feel. Does the image feel better in black and white? Sometimes it does, and other times it doesn't. But there's no right or wrong answer. It's personal preference. Pages 36 and 37. So when the senator finishes his speech in most locations, they do what's called a rope line after he comes down from the stage. And what that is literally back in the day, there was a rope and you walk the line and you kiss babies and shake hands. And nowadays you take selfies and maybe sign a couple of autographs here and answer a few questions. And so I was prepared for him to come down the stairs to then go around and do the rope line. What's interesting here is you can see one of the press photographers over on the right-hand side. You can read press on his press pass. Now, what happens is in local areas, they seem to always let everybody in who wants to shoot. So even if you're shooting for a student newspaper at a high school or a college, or you have some kind of affiliation with anybody, you kind of just email in and they basically give everybody a pass. And that's not just the senator here. That's happened to me well into the past. Like when I photographed Senator, at the time, Barack Obama in 2007, it wasn't hard to get a pass. And then going back even further, I think it was 2004, I got a pass to go photograph John Kerry, who was being introduced by Senator Joe Biden in Delaware. And I ended up there taking photos with a super old camera, a D2H. And the interesting thing was I was trying to get all access, which means I was just walking around, and I ended up where the press pool was, and a campaign staffer was saying, "Are you leaving with us on the plane?" And before I answered, someone else who was a part of the press pool said, "Not part of the press pool." Kind of like in Almost Famous when the guy at the back door is like, "He's not on the list." I wasn't on the list. So yeah, so for rope lines, I just try to get ready and prepared for a shot like this, and coming down and around, it helps tell the story. Pages 38 and 39. So as the rope line continues, I'm walking backwards the whole time. And this is where, again, that technology of the new cameras, the mirrorless cameras, comes into play, because I don't have to worry about moving focusing points. I can just focus on capturing the image and composition, because here the camera is focusing on the senator's eye and locking on. I just love this photo. I love the smile that he has. I love the smile that the person on the left has, and they're clutching hands. It's great. One of the things going through my mind in situations like this is there's probably 20 press photographers. I think they were allowed to stand on the stage at this point, while myself, Bernie's main photographer, and a couple of the film crew are all clumped together. You don't want to bone each other's shot. So I don't want to get in the way of their shot. They don't want to get in the way of my shot. So it's kind of one of these dances where you grab your shot, you move out of the way, you let them do what they need to do, but you just react. I don't care as much about the press photographers. I don't want to say like I try intentionally to bone their shots, but if there's a situation where I need to get a certain image, I'm there embedded. I like to say that we kind of take priority, and those are the people that are traveling with the senator. And so I don't want to ruin someone else's shot. So I'm very cognizant of that. But when I need to get that certain shot and a press person is maybe behind me or something, I'll grab the shot and then I'll get out of the way. Pages 40 and 41. So remember when I got the senator walking in? Well, I needed to get him walking out. So where he walked in a couple of hours before, the staff and the senator are now walking towards the same exit they came through to come in. Now they're going outside to meet with a bunch of supporters before jumping in the vehicles to drive across the state to go to another rally. But what's great about the framing here is you've got Will on the right-hand side of the frame, the body guy. So he's creating dimension. Bernie has his staffers behind him walking, and then the senator is where my focus is, and he's looking off to the side. But look at his step again. This is the proper step. That heel is going down, that toe is about to come down. That seems to be the perfect time to capture him walking. I just love seeing the staffers. You've got Brian back there taking, looks like he's looking at a couple of images to see if he got what he needed. And then the rest of the staffers are following on the way out. Pages 42 and 43. After 13 images to start off the book in black and white, we now have a color image. You've got volunteers waiting outside. And so the senator just finished giving his speech inside, doing the rope line, and then right before we leave to go to the next location, there's usually some supporters and volunteers to speak with. For me, what I'm thinking is I want to get the wide shot because I want everybody to be seen, so that if these images were given to these supporters, then they have a picture of themselves with the senator. That's why I established this shot on the wider side. It's more like a medium wide because it's not fully wide, but that gives me the opportunity to show everybody and just show the senator speaking outside with his supporters and volunteers. Pages 44 and 45. Because I already established the scene with a wider shot, like I mentioned earlier, you get those wides, the tights, the mediums, the details, a little bit of everything. I was able to do this. I got behind the supporters. I used multiple levels of out-of-focus people to draw us in right to the senator's face. I love the tones of the black and white. I love the contrast of the image. I love the dimension that is created. And one of the ways that I'm able to run through the wides, the mediums, the tights, and the details is that I carry 4, 5, 6 different lenses in my bag, and I'm not afraid to change them. I'm not afraid to find the specific focal length that I want to have for that time. So I may go from a wide angle lens that's a zoom to a prime lens, which means there is no zooming. Your zooming mechanism are your feet because you have to move forward because it doesn't zoom. And those lenses tend to be sharper, give you nicer contrast, nicer detail. So I like to run through a lot of different lenses during a shoot, which means my bag may be a little heavier, but I try to pare down to the lenses that I'm going to use the most. And I love using primes. If you have the opportunity to use primes and the time to use primes, I highly recommend doing it. It just creates such nice dimension and clarity when you nail the shot. Pages 46 and 47. As soon as the senator's door closes, the press vehicle is leaving with or without you. The senator comes off the stage to greet his supporters along the rope line before heading back through the black curtains on his way out the same exit where he appeared 2 hours earlier. There's one more group of volunteers to speak with outside, but all I can hear in my head is this warning. As soon as the senator's car door closes, the press vehicle is leaving with or without you. I grabbed a few photos with the group before hovering around the press vehicle as I didn't want to be left behind on my first day. The senator's door closed and we were off on a 2-hour drive across Iowa to our next rally. I'm a photographer who likes running through a lot of different lenses during a shoot. That means I may have 4 to 6 different lenses in my bag at all times. My reasoning for this is to be able to capture the best photo story possible by making sure I grab the wides, the mediums, the tights, and the details. But how do I make sure I have the right lens on at the right moment? The answer to that is anticipation and pre-visualization. I'm constantly running through scenarios in my head. Are we going to be in a small space like an elevator where a wide angle is the best choice? Will there be multiple people in the frame? Will it be bright or dark? I think pre-visualization gives me the power to see the images before they happen. So when they do present themselves, I've already seen it and thus can capture it. Pages 48 and 49. University of Iowa, September 8th, 2019. Farmland and windmills dot the highway on our 2-hour straight shot heading east on I-80 as I finally get to give my brain a rest, check the images I just captured, and reflect on the amazing things I've gotten to experience thanks to photography. Photography has taken me around the world, opened many doors to people I could have only dreamed of photographing, and helped me build an amazing network of connections. Now here I am, sitting in the lead vehicle of the senator's motorcade as we barrel down the highway towards the next rally. Pages 50 and 51. The choice here was to go slightly wider to show the environment because we're on a college campus and they usually have some nice buildings. And it's also good to get the surroundings so that you can, anybody that knows the area would know exactly where the shot was taken. And that's why I went wider on this one. You can see Will, the body man, over here on the right-hand side. Right behind Will, there's an extra security guard because they bring out extra security when you're just out in the open. And I believe that is one of the campaigning staff members behind him or an advisor. You can see the senator's heel again as the toe is about to go down. So I consider that to be the perfect walking step. Once again, you can see that his jacket is slightly open with some sort of note inside. There you have in his right hand the folder with the speech that he's just about to give. Pages 52 and 53. This is truly behind the scenes of behind the scenes. You've got the riser behind the stage where there's supporters. You've got the BernieSanders.com banner up above. And we've got the senator isolated right here with a shallow depth of field. Now, for those who don't understand what that means is I shoot with a lens that allows me to isolate my subject while creating a blur in the background, which basically takes it from a snapshot, which you're used to seeing with, say, a cell phone or just a basic picture where everything's in focus from front to back and it just looks generic, to something like this where the subject is isolated, but you still see the background. It creates more dimension. And that's why I use a lot of lenses that allow me to do that. It becomes a little more difficult because we're using prime lenses instead of zooms, so you have to move your feet to get the right composition. But in these situations, I have the time to move around, and that's why I choose to do that, because I know that there's a major reward when I get the shot right. You get the senator right here, hands clutched behind his back again, holding on to his folder, which has the campaign speech, and you see that time and time again. So when I notice something happening over and over, I like to capture images of it, because as part of the photo story, you see it time and time again, and it's an important feature to call out. Pages 54 and 55. So this is just changing the angle slightly, moving around to the side and getting something different than the shot from the back. The reason I chose this one is I like the quiet contemplation. You've got the body man off to the left-hand side. You can see his foot. You've got the security guy here on the right. Looks like you have a press photographer out of focus in the background. And we now know, because I've established the scene where you saw in the image before that the stage is in front of him, that we know the stage is off to the right-hand side here. And this is the quiet moment before he goes on. From a photographic standpoint, the pole almost coming out of the senator's head is something that catches my eye. In photography, you want to make sure you don't have what's called a merger, and that's where something is basically merging with your subject, a tree, branches, in this case, a pole. It's kind of close. It's not a deal breaker in this case. But one of the things that goes through my mind when I have all access is that I don't want to take the same pictures that someone else is taking, because the people in front of the stage are only able to capture what's presented to them in front of them. They can only get the senator speaking. They can only get the supporters in the background, and that's it. And so when you have all access, you got to use it to get images that other people aren't able to get, because you've been chosen or given that access. And so that's why I like to move around and play with different angles so that I can tell the best story, but also utilize that access that I've been granted. Pages 56 and 57. This is an image that I feel wouldn't really stand on its own too well, but it's in the book because it helps transition us from the backstage area to the stage area. He's moving to the stage. Plus, you've got this natural framing being created by the barricades. You have we call that leading lines. It leads you through the frame to show you where you're going. I like that there's a connection with one of the college students, because you can see that their hands are connecting. One of the things that I've talked a lot about in this book so far is when the senator's walking, where his foot is. This isn't my favorite step. As you know, I've already said that I like when the heel is coming down and the foot's going forward. It's just that I still like the image enough to put it here. That's not a deal breaker to me. But yeah, just you see it now. Like, that step is kind of a little more awkward than the other one, but it kind of still worked. Another thing to point out here is you have the barricade, but you also have a lot of tripping hazards. So not only am I worried about the senator tripping on something here, I'm worried about myself tripping as I'm not looking, if I'm looking through the camera. So that's another thing you want to be careful of in these situations. You don't trip over anything, but I'm also very aware, hyper aware of the situation. I know he's got security people there, but it seems like my brain goes to capturing the images, but also being aware of the surroundings to see if anything's going to happen. Maybe I can step in. I don't know. You never know what you're going to do, but I am aware of the scene. Going over to the left-hand side of this frame, you can see the waiting press photographers. They are crouched down in front of the stage, and that again is where I've got that access to be where I need to be, and that's where the press people are allowed to be. Pages 58 and 59. Once again, establishing the scene. You get those wides, the mediums, the tights, and the details. I know I harp on that quite a bit, but maybe it will resonate with you if you're a photographer, or even if you're not and you're just traveling. You might remember, well, let me get a wide shot here. Let me get a tight shot. Let me get a detail. And that's important. So in the scene, you've got the senator right in the middle. You've got his supporters to the left on the riser. You have all of the supporters on the right clumped into this area. You've got the press staff in the back. You can see them more in the middle of the frame. Just look for this light post, but right behind there, that's the press riser. That's where the news stations broadcast from. That's where the senator's live feed was from. And that's a place that you will never see me take photos from. The reason is it's just a generic shot that doesn't even establish a scene. all you ever get from that area is the senator speaking and the supporters in the back. You don't get to see the entire campus here like we get to see in this shot. You'll also notice that the press photographers are no longer in front of the stage. They've been moved out, and they'll be brought back later for when the speech is over to get the rope line. But this is one of those things that you've got buildings on your left creating a natural frame, buildings on your right creating a natural frame, and there's actually a photo that Brian, Bernie's photographer, got of Stephen and I standing up on top of these stairs to get a higher angle. You can see me on the one side and Stephen on the other. It's pretty cool when there's another photographer there able to document what we're doing and that we get caught in the images too. So that's always something cool. Pages 60 and 61, another rope line. One thing that you don't get from this image, because this is an image frozen in time, is that this stuff happens really fast. You have to be moving quick, you have to have your settings right, you have to be on point, and you have to grab the shots when they present themselves. On the left-hand side, you've got Brian, Bernie's photographer, who's out on the road with them. You can see his camera's hanging there. He's got a camera up to his eye. You've got Will right here holding on to, I guess, the senator's speech. You've got the senator walking through, and on the right, you've got a video guy named Josh Hansen. He's the video guy on the road, and he shows up in a bunch of my images because, again, we're a team. Where I mentioned earlier that I don't want to bone their shots, they don't want to bone my shots, I have no problem getting them in the images because they're part of the overall story. Also, I wanted to get a higher angle here, and that's why I went up on the stage so that I could get this shot where you see all of the supporters, you see the Bernie signs, you see the location. That's better to me than getting a low angle shot where all you get is the senator's back and the person in the front row. Here you at least see as much as possible, including the press riser, which, like I said, is a place that you would never see me shoot from. Pages 62 and 63. So on this day, on this campus, there were multiple campaign rallies set up. You had the main rally, and then there were, I believe, 2 or 3 more that were going to happen before the end of the day. Instead of jumping into the motorcade, the senator asked, how far of a walk is it? It was a couple blocks, so he said, let's just walk it. What I like about the shot, you have his campaign staffer here, and he's listening to what she has to say. You have other staffers in the back, along with Brian, the photographer, and it's just great that the senator is walking through the campus. The cool thing is that he'll encounter just students, and they'll be like, we love you, Bernie, and he's shaking hands, and he's talking to the people there, and he's always has a massive smile on his face when he's meeting supporters. And one of the difficult things as a photographer on the move is choosing the right lens. I have to think before we move, what lens should I have on? Now, where I said that I like to use the prime lenses, they don't zoom. I have to move my feet. I have to run ahead. I have to wait for them to walk into a certain area to get the shot if I don't have the right lens on. And so when you're moving and you're walking, it may be better to use a zoom lens. And this is probably why the president's photographers always have 2 cameras or 3 cameras on with different lenses, and they don't carry an actual bag because you don't have enough time to switch. You don't have time to stop and let me change this lens to this lens, and that's why they grab multiple bodies. Personally, I'm not a fan of having multiple bodies, but maybe if I was the president's photographer, I would reconsider that just because it's needed. Pages 64 and 65. So this is where we were walking to. We walked to this parking lot, which acted as the hold area before we went into the restaurant for the campaign rally. Now, one of the things I was really careful to do with the developing or processing of this RAW file was to keep it a little on the darker side. I didn't want to make it too bright because the sun had already gone down, right? You can see in the middle top of the frame that the lights in the parking lot are on. That's because it was already pretty much dark. So as a photographer, you don't need to or don't always want to brighten something to make it look like daylight, especially if it wasn't. And in this case, it wasn't. And so where everybody was standing, I thought this was a much better wide shot because we're standing in a parking lot. You got the two security guards to the left. You got Brian taking photos. You've got Will reading something. You've got the senator going over his notes with a campaign staffer. You got a couple of other people hanging around in the background. And on the right-hand side, you have a car that has a Bernie bumper sticker. And I tried to get Bernie to do a picture, maybe like a thumbs-up picture smiling with the bumper sticker, but that didn't happen. It would have been a pretty cool shot if it did. Pages 66 and 67. On 66, we have some text that says, "Let's walk it." Here we are walking across the University of Iowa campus on the way to the next rally a few blocks away. "I love you, Bernie," can be heard from across the street, and the senator waves in response. He shakes hands with a girl who stopped her bike at an intersection to say hi as we continue our walk. As the sun sets, the senator, his staffers, security, and I end up in a small parking lot behind the restaurant where the next rally is being held. He stands only a few feet away from cars with Bernie bumper stickers as he and his staffers go over some last-minute business. In a moment of levity, a massive smile appears on the senator's face, reminding me that it's not always just about business. And then it's back to business. Page 67. Here we have a massive smile on the senator's face. He was just cracking jokes. And like I said, it's not always business. It's mostly business. But there are these moments where the senator just cracks a funny joke or starts cracking up about something. And that's what's cool about the whole thing. Oh, and the Dewey. It says Dewey on the license plate. And that's kind of a deep pull because was it Dewey beats Truman or whatever it was back in the day? It's kind of funny that one says Dewey on it. Those are the hidden things that you don't normally see that present themselves after the fact. But I just love the fact that he's laughing here, and there's not a lot of images where he's laughing in the book. But like I said, you've got these moments, and then it's back to business. Pages 68 and 69. I love this 2-page spread because of the smile that the senator has here as he's shaking Josh's hand. Josh is on the road doing videos behind the scenes, and it's just awesome to see them embrace with a nice handshake and the senator to have a massive smile. From a photographic standpoint, I'm pretty sure I switched over to what's called an 85 millimeter 1.4 at the time. I don't think I used it very often. I think this is the only shot in the book where I used that. But again, at the very end of the book, we've got all of the details for you to look at from what camera was used, the shutter speed, aperture, ISO, and the exact time that it was shot. But I just love the smile on the senator's face. Pages 70 and 71. Throughout history and political history, you've seen a lot of photographs of presidents and senators and dignitaries in back rooms, in kitchens, walking through hallways, because they always are being taken through different corridors because they don't go in the front door because they are usually backstage and walking somewhere. And so I knew that if I was able to get a kitchen photo, that I was going to try and find the right angle. So I basically pre-visualized the kitchen scene. I couldn't have foreseen that it was going to look like this particular kitchen where you've got the pots and the pans and the buckets and the mops and even food over there to the left and spray bottles. It's not exactly the nicest kitchen, but it makes the point that you're not always going through glamorous areas. You're in kitchens, you're in hallways, you're behind the scenes. And so I knew I wanted to get the senator at least walking in, but also prepare for him to leave through the same place because I think I could get probably a better shot than I did in this one. But you got a staffer to the left. You've got Ari, the deputy campaign manager here, and then you've got the senator walking his way to another hold area before he was going to go give the speech in this restaurant. But there's a lot of details in here, whether they're good details, because this is not exactly the cleanest looking kitchen, but I think the textures and the colors add to the entire scene. And that's why this isn't black and white. It just felt much better to be in color. Because if you pull out all that color, you kind of lose the interest in the image, and that's why I stayed with this one to be in color. Pages 72 and 73. Entering and exiting through kitchens and back hallways seems to be par for the course. You might think it's all red carpets and velvet ropes, when in reality, it's tight squeezes through dark corridors on your way to the hold. The hold is the senator's last stop before speaking at a rally. It's his last chance to think and reflect on what he's about to say. Head bowed and hands clutched behind his back is a recurring pose for the senator as he waits for his introduction. Page 73. For whatever reason, this is still one of my favorite pictures from the entire book. It's the senator waiting to go on. You can see that there's a staffer holding the door open. There's a staffer in the door. You also have Ari in the foreground on the right-hand side. But on the other side of the door is a packed room in a restaurant where people are waiting to hear what the senator has to say. Now, I don't end up taking photos during his actual speech because it was too packed in there and the lighting wasn't great. And sometimes I choose not to do that because when I have access to the behind-the-scenes images, I find that they are more powerful. And this is where the senator has his head slightly bowed. His hands are behind his back. He's probably clutching his notes once again and the envelope or the folder as he thinks about what he's going to say. It's the same thing every single time. It's that moment right before you go on where you're thinking and then it's go time. What I'm thinking in this situation is that this is a United States senator who potentially could be a president of the United States. And we're standing in this kitchen-ish area where you've got the ceiling tile coming out. It looks not very good. You've got the paint peeling from the ground. You've got the need to order board on the right. It's just raw. And it's a raw, real scene. And that's where the all access comes into play, to be able to get these shots. These are the shots you don't want to miss. This is the stuff you want to show because not everybody gets to see this. And I'm happy that I can capture it and share it with you. Page 74 and 75. So you can see how tight this room was. There's a lot of people waiting. And the senator and the staff all said that if you want a selfie, you can get a selfie. Well, it's not exactly a selfie, but if you want a photo with the senator, we'll do it. So he took a photo with everybody. He shook everybody's hand. And in this situation, I know the lighting isn't very good. We can see that there's some, I guess, quasi-stage lights a little bit lighting him up. You've got a fluorescent bunch of tubes, 4-footers up above him. But in this situation, you kind of have to make a photo out of nothing. And so when I saw that they moved the podium out of the way, it says BernieSanders.com. Well, I knew that I wanted to focus on the senator, get this part out of focus, go with a slower shutter speed. Oh, look at her walk. Look at her step, right? The person that's walking in, their step is heel as the toe is about to go down. And it just, again, looks better. Now, there's some slight motion blur there because I went with a slower shutter speed because it was much darker. But I like that you have the motion of them moving towards the senator and he's about to embrace and say hi and a photo's going to be taken. And so sometimes you just have to make something out of nothing, and it turns out to be a good shot. Pages 76 and 77. We have the classic leaving through the kitchen shot right here. I knew this was the shot that I wanted. I waited 10 plus minutes while the senator was taking all the photos and shaking hands to prepare for him to come out through the kitchen. Now, we see that Will is leading the way. We've got the senator coming through the door, and I almost ruined the shot. What happened is Ari, the deputy campaign manager, had taken off his sport coat and it kind of fell on the floor. So I picked it up and moved it and put it on my camera bag so that it wasn't sitting on the floor. And when Ari and the senator were in that other room, I heard Ari say something like, "Where's my jacket?" And he was looking for his jacket, and the senator was like, "Well, why would anybody want your jacket, Ari?" And I was like, "Oh man, I got his jacket." So I said, I got your jacket. And then I waited. Then they walked through. I gave Ari his jacket, but I ended up getting the picture that I wanted. The details in this, the ultra wide, you got to establish those scenes, right? You have to show the environment. This is not the nicest, most glamorous environment in the world at all, but I think it helps tell the story of what you need to do when you're becoming or running for president or running for Senate or running for office. You're going through real things. It's not all glamorous. You have locations like this. And that's why this is probably one of my top 3 shots in the entire book, because it's the shot that I wanted the most. I pre-visualized, I waited It's probably one of the shots that I wanted the most, and I'm happy that I was able to capture it and capture it this way. Pages 78 and 79. So at the end of the day, we were stopping to have dinner at a steakhouse. And when we got there, the room wasn't set up for us. We had a back room set up where the staff and the senator and everybody else was going to eat, but it wasn't ready. And it was only a few minute wait, but the senator was like, "Can I sit here?" And so the senator just pulls out a chair. Ari sits with him as they look at the menu. The rest of the staffers find other tables or sit at the bar and order our food. And one of the important things you need to remember when you're out there is that you need to make sure that you get your order in as soon as possible, because as soon as the senator is done eating, it's kind of time to leave. So even if you haven't gotten your food or finished eating, you got to get it into a box and take it with you. What I love about this image is that this is a presidential candidate just sitting amongst everyday Iowanians. I think they're called Iowanians, people from Iowa. They're just sitting there like, wow, that's like Bernie Sanders sitting there. That's what's cool. This could be a president in a matter of a year. And this is an image that you would never see again. You will never see a president just eating in a restaurant, just sitting at a table without security around. That's just not something that would occur. And the funny thing is, I had permission to shoot whatever I wanted, but the body man saw me take a couple of pictures and he's like, no photos, which I stopped taking, but I wasn't going to take photos when someone's eating. That's never a good thing. Those photos just don't work out. But I already got the shot because I knew it was an important shot. Now, there's a photograph that Pete Souza took of Barack Obama before he was president, when he was a junior senator, and he was in, I believe, St. Petersburg, Russia, and he's walking on the streets. And what's great about the photo is that it's the senator just walking and nobody knows who he is. And that's an image that could never be replicated again with Barack Obama, because he is a past president, a former president, and everybody knows who he is. So that's why I love this. The senator's just sitting here ordering dinner, having a meeting with Ari. Regular people are just sitting around and they're just letting him be. They're just leaving him alone. Page 80 and 81. Cedar Rapids, Iowa, September 9th, 2019. Today we start the morning in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. After multiple local campaign stops, we'll finish 797 miles away in Denver, Colorado. Pages 82 and 83. Now, before heading out on the campaign trail for the day, there were a bunch of different interviews set up with local news stations as well as newspapers. And this is behind the scenes. You don't normally see these interviews happening or images of them. You see what the camera captures for the news station. In this case, it was actually a Fox News affiliate interviewing the senator, asking him a bunch of questions. And the campaign had set up a bunch of Bernie posters on the wall, and that becomes the backdrop. And so you don't see that it's just a conference room in the hotel. But this is what I love sharing. I love sharing the images that you rarely ever get to see. And why would I shoot this tight, right? As a photographer, I would never just shoot a tight shot of the senator up there with that background, because there would be no context. And in the grand scheme of the story, it's more important to pull back and show what's going on. We've got the conference table in the middle. We've got Will taking a break over here. We've got a staffer over here. We've got Steven shooting video of me taking photos in this scene. We've got Brian's camera, his lens sticking out just a little bit over there. You've got a cart with some, coffee and some tea, and that's it. And so this is what happens behind the scenes. There's a bunch of these press interviews that happen in here, and I just wanted to get a couple of images. Pages 84 and 85. This is what I have dubbed the entourage shot, because it's everybody just walking and making their way to the vehicles. When we were waiting for the senator to finish up doing his interviews, I was waiting downstairs in the lobby trying to think, what shot could I get? What would present itself and what would end up making for a really good image? And you kind of don't know. You guess. You have a feel that maybe this might work, maybe this might be something, but you can never say that, well, this was the exact shot that I was looking for. I wanted this flying V, and that's exactly what I got. Now, what I did is I got my stuff in the car before everybody got outside, because we know once the senator's door is closed, then the lead vehicle has to go, and they're leaving you behind whether you're in the car or not. So I looked outside, I saw this area, and I was like, I'm going to wait here for the senator to walk and see what I get. And so I just kept peeking inside. I saw the senator come down. I saw everybody else mobilizing, getting ready to leave. And then they turned the corner and boom, we got this particular shot. That's the entourage shot. There's so many things I love about it. You got the flying V, you got Will smiling, you've got the staffer on the right smiling, you got Ari in the front with the paper leading the way. Senator Sanders is rolling his own bag. That's one of the things that he always does. He takes his own bag, he opens his own doors, he closes his own doors. He doesn't need anybody else or want anybody else to do it. So that's an important thing to point out. We've got Brian off to the left-hand side. You can see the camera strap that's hanging with he's got his cameras. You got an awesome reflection in the car door. You also have Ari's foot in that perfect step. He's got the heel down and the toe is up in this one. And the senator, his step is pretty good. He just finished a step as well. It's actually all pretty good when it comes to those steps. But this is still one of my all-time favorite shots from the entire thing, the entourage shot. And you honestly never know what you're going to get. You have a couple of seconds to get this. You know, you may prepare for 5-10 minutes and wait, and then it's go time. You have to get your settings locked in. You have to make sure that your focus is going to nail where it needs to nail, and you get a shot. You take 1, 2, 3 shots, then it's over, and they move on to the next thing. It just happens so quick. But when you're able to just freeze a moment and you look back and you're like, yeah, I got that shot, that's what feels really good. Pages 86 and 87. Here we have Ari jumping into the back of the SUV. We've got the senator opening his door for the front. Like I said, he likes to open his own doors, roll his own bags, and he likes to sit shotgun. I wanted to try and get into that vehicle for some point to see what photos I could get. I mean, the only photos that you could end up getting there is probably the senator's reflection in a rear view mirror or a side view mirror, but I didn't ever get into the car. I was kind of interested to hear what the conversation sounded like if I was in that car, to hear what they're going over, but I wasn't. But one thing you need to remember here, I'm away from the press vehicle. If you look at the press vehicle, which is the Dodge, I guess, Caravan that's on the right-hand side, the sliding door is open. It's waiting for me, because as soon as the senator's door closes, the press vehicle is leaving, as I've said before, with or without me or without anybody else. And the funny thing is, when I was out on the road a little later on, we actually left the interpreter behind because she was not in the vehicle when the senator got into his car and had to catch a ride with a different staffer to get back to the next location. They actually will leave you behind. So at this point, I'm grabbing a couple of these shots. This is all quick. We had the entourage shot. They got to the back of the car. They put stuff in the car. They get up to the front of the car. They go sit in the car. And Brian is off to the side of the frame. You don't see him here, but you see it in the documentary. He's waving to me he's like, come on, get in the car. We're going to leave. And I'm like, I knew that. But as soon as the senator opened the door, I got the pictures. I grabbed my bag. I ran. I hopped into the open sliding door of the Caravan, and the car went. Pages 88 and 89. Now here we are at a high school for a rally, and the senator was just in his hold, which is, again, the holding area before they take a walk, and I knew he would be coming down this hallway. Of course, it's a high school, and the lighting is never really good, and there's security people to the left, another cop in the back. We've got Will over here to the right. We've got the senator. He's holding his papers again on his way to the stage, and I have a couple of decisions to make in this situation. Do I shoot from the right wall? Do I shoot from the left wall? Do I stand up and shoot from a high angle? Do I kneel down in the middle of the floor to take a low angle? I generally get lower to the ground, and that's not just because I'm already short. It's because I like the angle when you're down. It takes everything in certain situations from something that would be like a snapshot and turn it into more of a photograph because it just makes the subject seem larger. It's the same thing when you're photographing kids. If you get down on their level, they look better than if you just shoot down on them. So it creates some dimension. And so I chose to stay right here in the middle of the hallway. And it's kind of similar to what happens when you're shooting a football game and the football players are all going to run out and the cheerleaders are holding that thing and they run through the paper and then they run right past you. I chose to stay in the middle, just like at the football, because I know that the football players generally are paying attention and they're not going to run you over. And I also knew that in this situation that the senator probably wasn't going to run me over either, because there's only 4 people walking down the hallway. So I stayed in my place. They started walking. I got my shots. I didn't bail and I didn't move until they passed me. So I was better to just stay there and let them walk past me as if I didn't exist. Pages 90 and 91. After walking down the hallway, we end up right here. The leading lines in this are really cool. I love the fact that you have the carpets running from right to left. I mean, they could be running from left to right also. And what I really meant to say was left to right, because that's going towards the door. Then you have the carpet that goes through the door. You have the open door. The senator is to the left of the open door, listening, waiting for his time to be announced and then to go on. He has his hands once again behind his back, clutching his notes and his speeches, and he's just thinking. And it's just me and Steven and like a security guard off to the other side taking these photos. It's the quiet moments before you go on. You can also see Brian to the right of the frame in the doorway, and then Ari's to the left of the frame of the doorway. And I just like the juxtaposition of knowing that the rally's out there and they're all waiting for this person, Senator Bernie Sanders. And here he is behind the scenes just waiting to go on. Pages 92 and 93. Now, before I describe this image to you or tell you what I like about it, because this is probably my favorite image in this entire book, I have a thing for diner shots. I've done it with musicians at Waffle Houses down south. I just love getting photos in the real world situations because you always stop at a diner. And the senator wanted to stop at this particular diner on our way to the airport to head to Colorado. Now, leading up to this, the senator's vehicle so happened to be in the front, which normally the press vehicle is in the front. I had the idea that I wanted to get into the diner before the senator. And in order to do that, I saw that the senator's car stopped. I'm in the right-hand side of the caravan. The senator starts to get out. I slide my door open before the car stops, and as soon as it stops, I jump out. I already had on there the lens that I wanted to use. I had my settings guesstimated to where I thought they should be, and I ran past the senator and his body person and a couple of staffers to get into the diner first. This stuff happens so fast. And so I get in there, I dial my settings real quick because I'm looking through the electronic viewfinder. The senator turns the corner. I go bam, bam, bam. The next thing you know, I'm getting a finger waves telling me to basically get out of the way. So I was acknowledged by the senator right there. It was more so to, like, meh, like I don't want a photo type of thing. But this isn't something that he would, remember later on, like, oh, Jared was taking pictures in the diner and I didn't really like that. But I love this image. I was off setting-wise. I was off by a couple of stops, like 2 stops, but because I shoot RAW, I was able to bring it back and make it look like this. I actually have it blown up to 48 inches by 72 inches at my house because I absolutely love this image. Now, when we look around the image, we've got one of the employees on the right. Looks like I don't know what he's doing. Maybe that's a bagel or making some kind of lunch right here. We've got this gentleman turning around on his stool, folding his newspaper. He's got his partially eaten food right there. You've got these women sitting in the booth to the left, and I'm pretty sure I heard someone say, is that Bernard Sanders or is that Bernie Sanders as they walked in or as he walked in? I'm actually pretty happy. I got my lines very straight here. If you look down at the bottom, you can see that the carpet's straight, the tiles are straight. I love the reflections of the globe lights on the left-hand side of the entranceway. It's just like they extend on. Even though there's just one here, it's like a reflection going back, 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 and back. And that's what I love about diner shots. You generally have some interesting lighting, and it definitely worked in this image. So again, this stuff happens really fast. You have to think about it before you get there, and then you just need to react and get the image. And that's what I was able to do. And I'm pretty sure in the documentary, you're able to see this scene. It just happens fast. I know Steven wasn't in there yet. I was the first one into the diner. I just burst through that door, started walking backwards, got it, boom, shot the shot, got told to get out of the way, got out of the way, and called it a day. Pages 94 and 95. After the diner, the campaign wanted to stop at a Walgreens, or in this case, it ended up being a Walgreens, to make some sort of campaign ad about high drug prices in the United States. Obviously, we know that the senator is a big proponent of lowering the cost of drugs, and why should it be more expensive in the U.S. for the same thing that you can get in Canada for 1/10 the price? But this isn't about politics. This is about this photo. So we pulled off into this parking lot where the digital team had already set up a camera. They had already put a mark on the ground, and they just wanted to get the senator's jacket steamed, and he was putting on his tie. The reason I like this is because this is truly behind the scenes of behind the scenes. You have Chris Witchey right here on the right-hand side of the frame waiting to put the microphone on the senator. You've got Ari and another staffer off here by the car door because they just used the steamer that they had, and that's why you can see some of the wetness on the ground is from the steamer because they were steaming the jacket to make sure there were no wrinkles. And those are the details that you don't really notice until I point them out, which is the main reason why I'm doing this audio, because you're catching things that you otherwise would not have known. So from a technical standpoint, there's nothing special about this photograph, but in the grand scheme of things as a storytelling image, it's a really good transition from this image to the next image that we get to, which is a really important one for this book. Page 96. I had one chance to get the shot, and I fucked up. There's always a staple photo I try and capture with every photo story, a portrait. In the case of the senator, I was told repeatedly that probably wasn't going to happen. Deep down inside, I knew it was going to happen. I just had to pick the right moment. Now entering the right moment. We pulled off the road into a Walgreens parking lot to film a campaign ad. The two-person film team already had the camera set, mics ready, and tape on the ground for the senator's mark. If there was ever going to be a chance to steal a portrait, this was going to be it. I grabbed my portrait lens, got my settings locked, tested my exposure, and waited off to the side while the senator recited his lines. I knew I needed to be ready because I would only get one shot. Between takes, I made eye contact with the deputy campaign manager who gave me the nod to make my move. "Senator, can I grab a quick portrait?" 10 seconds later, I got the shot. Or did I? I quickly reviewed the images only to realize I missed the focus. That was my one chance to get the portrait, and I blew it. Thankfully for me, the senator realized he needed to fix his tie. As soon as it was fixed, I stepped in and said, "Now that your tie is fixed, let's redo the portrait." He said, "Okay, make it quick," and bam, this time I nailed it. I got the shot. Page 97. This is the portrait. This is also the back of the book. This is the picture that people said should have been on the front of the book, but as you know, as I explained earlier, that it was better on the back and a photojournalistic picture was better on the front. So yeah, I really did mess up the first shot. And I thought I was doing the right thing by turning off the IAF when I was shooting the pictures, and it turned out that it wasn't the right thing. And I even tested it the night before. The only difference was the senator has glasses on. What happened is the autofocus grabbed the rim of the glasses, and when you're shooting wide open to get that shallow depth of field, if you hit the rim of the glasses, the eye is going to be out of focus, and if the eye is out of focus, I cannot use the image. Now, I liked that out of focus image. I liked the composition slightly better. The wind wasn't blowing, and his hair looked a little better at the top. But to get the portrait that I really, really needed and really wanted to get, then I'm going to be happy with the results here. And I am happy with the results here. I love the portrait. And I know I was told that I wouldn't be able to get this shot. I wouldn't be able to get a portrait. But I just picked my time. I kept mentioning it to the deputy campaign manager, and we were prepared that if it was ever going to happen, it was going to be at this little stop. And when there was a couple of seconds, that's all I needed. You might think that you have a lot of time for a portrait. I mean, sometimes you do, but other times you literally have 10 seconds to get the shot. In this case, I probably had about 3 seconds to try and get it right the second time, but thankfully locked on the eye with the IAF, took a bunch of shots, got him smiling, and then he did his rest of the campaign ad, and then we went to the airport. Pages 98 and 99. Denver, Colorado, September 9th, 2019. Now, before I read the bottom of this page, it is the same exact date. We were just in Iowa. We went to a private airport to board the jet. Now, we did fly out in a private jet. It was a G4. And at the time, we weren't allowed to take any photos walking up to the jet or while we were on the jet. And those were images that I really, really wanted to get. But because they said, please don't take any photos here, I wasn't going to take any chances. I wasn't going to try and steal a shot. That's not something you do if you want to have a long-term relationship with a customer or a person, is go against their ask. And so I didn't go against their ask. Now, why were they flying in a private jet? And the answer to that is, up until this point, the senator was and the staff were taking regular commercial airliners. And that means that you can only campaign in places that are close to airports. And we were a couple of hours away from the airport in Iowa, and that's why they brought in the jet. And every person had a jet that was running for president. Literally every person that was in the campaign or that was running had a private jet at this point so that they could get to more campaign stops. It allows them to do that. But what we were told before we were on the road is that when they would take the commercial jets, that the senator loved doing it because he would go through the airports and he would get stopped and he would talk to people and take selfies and sign autographs. But that takes a toll on you time-wise, right? You're using a lot of time and a lot of energy to go from point A to point B, so you can't get in as many campaign stops. That's why they all bring in these jets so that you can get to more stops quicker and also fly out of smaller private airports. And this was my first time on a private jet, and I will say it was an absolute amazing experience to be able to just drive into the airport, walk up to the jet, they put your bags on the back of it, you walk up in, you sit in your awesome, nice, comfortable chair. 20 minutes later, after all of the safety checks, you take off like a rocket to 50,000, like to about 50,000 feet, and you're off. It's a race car in the sky, and it is an awesome experience. Page 99. So now to the bottom of the page where we have some text. 2 hours after boarding the jet in Iowa, I climbed down the stairs onto the tarmac in Denver, where the motorcade is waiting with the doors wide open to shuttle us to the final rally of the day. From what I was being told, they were expecting a crowd of 10,000 or more people. This was poised to be the largest rally of my 48-hour sprint and ultimately ended up netting me a few iconic images. Pages 100 and 101. This is a massive rally. 10,000 people showed up in Denver, Colorado. Now, once we landed at the airport, we took the motorcade back to a hotel, and we had about an hour or two before the rally was going to start, and I decided to go over to where the rally was going to occur to try and figure out where I wanted to shoot from, because there was no reason to just hang out and sit there and do nothing. So we all jumped in one of the cars, and we went over to where the rally was. Brian made sure that at every rally stop, there was going to be a super tall ladder. Brian is the campaign photographer for Bernie. And so we went and saw where the ladder was set up. It was behind one of the side press risers. They had multiple press risers, the one that goes right in front of the stage, and there was one overflow one to the side, which was the angle that you see this image from. I'm standing on the press riser. Now, the reason I chose to stand on the press riser and not the ladder is it was a precarious ladder. It was a tall one, and I did not feel safe or secure up there. It was fine. It was safe and secure. I just didn't feel comfortable up there taking the photos, so I chose not to. Now, I chose to go onto the press riser at the highest point and take some test images to figure out what angle I wanted to capture, what lens did I want to use. And I recall starting with a wider angle lens, because you would think to show 10,000 people, you want to use the widest lens possible. And the problem with that is that there's not a VIP area, but an area for people to sit, that they have a clear view of the stage and they're not clumped in with all of the people. But when I shot wider, I saw the chairs, and some of them were empty, and there was empty spaces, and it didn't make for a photograph. It made for a picture, but it wasn't going to be good enough. And so that's where I chose to use a longer focal length lens to try and compress the image more, but just fill it with all of the people and not empty space. Now, there was not a lot of empty space. As you can see, there were 10,000 people crowded into this area, and I was waiting for the senator to come out, and this is where he did his fist wave. I locked my focus onto him, and a little secret here, I'm just going to let you in on it, is I think it back focused. And what back focused means is that it focused on one of the signs maybe 10 feet in front of him. And that's not really something you would notice unless I pointed it out to you, but I kind of like to point it out to you. I don't know why the focus missed a little bit because I put the point right where it needed to be, but it's still an awesome shot. This is one of those things that you try to do everywhere there's a campaign rally. You try to show a wide scene to show the location so that you can literally put together an entire collection of images showing every single stop. Now, I wasn't out there very long, so I didn't see some of the bigger stops or some of the more scenic locations, but I think this looks absolutely incredible. The sun was starting to go down. There were a ton of people there. This was the biggest rally that we saw in our 48 hours. And then there's also the happy accidents that happen. Do you see off to the right-hand side the signs that say Bernie? I didn't see that when I was taking the picture. I was just composing with the senator in the middle, and I had no idea that they raised the Bernie name right there with all of the Colorado stuff in it. Later, I asked about that. I'm like, did people bring that? And they're like, no, we put it there. And so they have staffers that hold these up, and they have that for different locations. And it totally makes the image better. I mean, the fact you got the senator here, you can see his bald spot. You can see him waving with his fist, and it says Bernie there. We've got the building in the background. We've got all the people holding up their signs. And that's what makes this a fantastic, iconic image. Pages 102 and 103. So I spent a lot of time at this rally trying to find the images, and honestly, I was having trouble. Now, I'm not sure if I wasn't feeling well from the flight or something else was going on, but I kind of go into different moods from time to time. Sometimes I'm really up, and sometimes I'm down and contemplative, and for whatever reason, I was just in a little bit of a funk during this particular shoot, and it was becoming more difficult for me to find the images. And sometimes they present themselves, and other times they don't, and other times you shoot your way out of it. So I went behind the stage here, and I love the symmetry of the shot. You've got the railing to the right, you've got the curl of the railing to the left. What I don't like about the image is it doesn't really show you the vast amount of people that are there. You can't see that there's 10,000 people there. But when you're telling a photo story, if you already have that wide that establishes the scene, then you can get away with some of the other shots like this one. I just feel that this is an awesome behind-the-scenes black and white shot. I love the scissor lifts in both, that are flanking the senator. You've got the lights on them. The color would have been okay, but I think the black and white sells it much better all day. I just love the dimension that's in the image. It just feels like there's nice separation between the senator and the people, and I just like the feel of it. And so that's why I put it here. And symmetry plays a major part in a lot of photography. Sometimes you are right in the middle and symmetry works, and other times you don't need it to be totally symmetric. But in this case, I think it works out extremely well. Pages 104 and 105. Now, I was in a funk, like I said just before, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the book because we have that tighter shot in the beginning of the book that starts off that 2-page spread where you have the tight shot of the senator, you have the Capitol building in the background, you've got the sun rays and everything like that. But I really like the wide angle here. You know this is the senator as soon as you look at it. Now, the way that I got out of the funk was thanks to Steven, as I mentioned earlier, who came out of the pit and showed me that he was shooting video, silhouetted video, and I just ran with it. I'm like, that's a great idea. I need to do the same thing. And it's just great when you can get some inspiration like that and then turn it into something, because I was lost. And it happens. I get lost out there on shoots sometimes. It's a funk. It happens, and you got to fight through it, and you break through it. Thankfully, Steven was shooting the silhouetted video, and I was like, this is awesome. I'm going to go do the same thing. So I just hung around the pit area. Nobody else was in there. There was no other press at that time allowed there, but I was allowed to go there, and Steven was allowed to go there. And so I just waited for those hand movements. Remember what I said earlier. hand movements. So as soon as someone's hand moves, I start taking pictures. This just helps you know that it's the senator. I mean, you know it's him from the silhouette. Another thing I love about it is that the way that we printed it, I wanted to make sure that you could still read Bernie on the podium. That was one of the things I wanted to keep in there. So you have Bernie on the podium. You can see the American flag to the right-hand side. There's actually supporters behind him, but I wanted to isolate the image more than anything else. I wanted the senator to be the main focus. You've got the awesome sun streaks going through the sky because it was behind the building with the clouds. It's just one of those shots that if he was to become president, this would be one of those iconic images. Pages 106 and 107. So you can't forget about the people behind the scenes. We've got Ari here, the deputy campaign manager, right in the middle in the blue Bernie shirt. You've got Stephen right next to him. Stephen is holding, at the time, we were using the Nikon Z6s to do all of our videos, and that's what the entire documentary was shot on. So, a big thanks to Ari for helping us in this entire situation to make this happen. A big thanks to Stephen for being there on the road with me and capturing the behind the scenes stuff and helping me get out of that funk. Don't forget that things happen away from the main stage. Don't forget that there's more going on than just the action in front of you. And a teacher back in college said to me one day when I was shooting hockey is that there's more going on than what's happening on the ice. There might be a kid in the stands with their parents. There might be this going on, a reflection of a kid in the glass. Don't forget to turn around and capture the behind the scenes things. And that resonated with me, thankfully, because it's all about the candid images with me. So that's why I turned around, got this shot, put it in the book, because I owe a debt of gratitude to these two people here for helping make this happen. Pages 108 and 109. This is the last photo of this section, and it was quite possibly going to be the last photo of this experiment, this time on the road, because we had 48 hours out there. I mean, as it turns out later on, I did end up back on the road again, but at this point, I didn't know that. In making this image, I wanted to get up on stage and have the senator walk towards the back of the stage because there were stairs on both sides. As you saw with the railings, there was a stair to the left and a stair to the right. He was supposed to come back towards me, toward the stair on the right. But when he finished, he turned to the left and he just kept going to the left. So sometimes things don't go as planned, but I really like this image. The thing that grabs me the most is that everybody else is going nuts for the senator. You got 10,000 people screaming and he just looks calm. He's folding his speech and he's walking towards the stairs on the left because he went and did a rope line. But I just love that he just comes across as quiet and calm, and then everybody else is going absolutely bonkers in the background. The black and white was great to finish off the section. It just looks better than the color, and of course the sun was going down. It was past sundown, so it was getting darker and darker, but I just absolutely love this image. Pages 110 and 111. And just like that, they were gone. What started with a photo of the senator walking into a small rally in Iowa less than 48 hours before ended with him leaving the stage to a backdrop of 10,000 people in Denver. And just like that, they were gone. And I was on my way to the airport to catch a red-eye home. What I loved about being on the road, beyond having all access to go anywhere and do anything, was the fact that we were always on the move, meaning there was always something to capture. Beyond that, when we wrapped for the day, we had a built-in group of people to wind down with and get to know. Sitting at the airport waiting to board the red-eye gave me some time to finally reflect on the last 48 hours. I sat with my laptop open, arrowing through my images in Lightroom, looking for the best of the best with honors, sir. Seeing those images flash across the screen gave me a sense of accomplishment. For as confident as I am in my work, I always worry if I will be able to replicate my past successes time and time again. Thankfully, from what I was seeing on the screen, I knew I did it again. Pages 112 and 113. Venice Beach, California, December 21st, 2019. The text came in giving me the green light to book a last-minute flight to LA to photograph Bernie's Venice Beach rally. What made this particular rally of interest to me was that AOC would be joining Bernie. Now, I know I already had all access to photograph the senator, but I'd never met AOC or anyone on her team for that matter. That meant I was taking a chance by flying cross-country, not knowing if I would be able to get all access to photograph her. Well, the answer to that question is just a page turn away. Now, before you turn the page, I do want to say you can see that a lot of time has gone by between the first time that I went out on the road and this time, because we went from September all the way to December, and the plan was never to jump back out on the road. But with the people that I met on the road, with Ari being amenable to me coming back out onto the road, I took that opportunity when Bernie was going to be with AOC in Venice Beach, and I was like, I need to go do this, or I'd like to go do this. So I dropped the call. They let me know, yes, you can come out last minute. I flew out there, and it really was a risk. It was one of those things where you take an opportunity when it presents itself, and then you have to make it happen when you're out on the road. Like I said in the text down at the bottom is, I didn't know anyone in her camp, but I already knew people in Bernie's camp. And if they could make the right connection, and then I could do the rest by showing my work, then there was a good opportunity that I would get a chance to photograph her. Now, we did the first 48-hour sprint, and that was with Steven out on the road filming it with me. And now when I jumped back out onto the road, it was just me. I wasn't looking to film it. It was just, I want to get back out there. This is something that if the senator does go on to become the presidential nomination, that maybe there would be a place for me on the team to continue to do what I was doing. And so the time was ticking, leading up to the primaries and going even further. So this was getting into prime time for the primaries, and a lot was going to be determined in the next few months. Pages 114 and 115. Now, you already see me in the room photographing AOC, but it's the lead up to actually getting access to the room that's an interesting story. So I showed up a couple hours early for the rally. I went out to the Venice Beach area. I met up with Ari, who gave me my pass, and I was just waiting around. And then he said he was going over to the hotel where Bernie and AOC were meeting with different constituents and different people and filming a bunch of different things. And I was like, can I go with you? And so, yeah, I went over, and instead of spending the time with the senator, I wanted to try and get access to AOC's camp and get into this room. So when I was walking down the hallway, I knew where they were filming some ad spots for the Bernie campaign. They already had Danny DeVito. I believe they already had Tim Robbins come through because it's LA, so there's a lot of people there. And now they had AOC in the room. But I had Ari introduce me to the person that was working with AOC, and I had carried with me a 12x9 photo book, one of the photo books that I get done at Printique, because I like to show my work off to someone in a physical form. It's one thing to hand someone your phone and have them flip through on a 6-inch screen, and it's like, all right, cool. But when they can tangibly hold on to something, it means more. It makes a bigger impression. And yeah, it's a pain in the ass to carry this book around, but I use that as the key to unlock the door to give me access. So when this guy came out, the person that was working with AOC, I said, hey, how you doing? This is what I'm doing for the Bernie campaign. Here's a sample of what I'm doing. What I'm looking for is access to come in and get the candid images. And I always say, for whatever reason, the real deal candid images, it just feels right to me. So I hand him the book. He flips through it and he's like, these are great. Can I take this back to show AOC? And so he takes it back. He shows it to her. I'm like, yeah, sure, you can take this back. I mean, that's the whole point of the book. And whether I get it back or not, which I would get it back, that really wasn't a question. It just helps unlock that door. Like I said, it's a key. And so when they came back walking down the hallway, I didn't take any pictures at that point because I didn't want to, you don't want to overstep your boundaries. So he came back and he's like, these are great. She likes them. Yeah, come on in. So that's when I went into the hotel room, and this is what was basically in front of me. You have this colorful room. You've got this blue carpet. You've got this goldish, greenish, 1970s, yellowish looking sofa. AOC is wearing a bright ass red dress. She's got red lipstick on. And the room, the contrast and the colors just looked fantastic. So she was preparing to do one of the commercial spots. We've got Josh here on the left-hand side, who you saw earlier in the book shaking hands with Bernie and a few other places. And he's setting up to do the B camera angle, because there is a main camera angle as well. And we'll see that in just a second. But one of the coolest things here is that the lights were already set. And when you have video lights that are awesome, that are already set, it makes photography so much easier, because all I need to do is concentrate on getting my composition and my exposure right, and everything else is going to look fantastic. So this was just to show you we're now in the room. This is AOC. I'm within a couple of feet from her, and that's this image right here. Pages 116 and 117. So whereas on the page before, you have just a shot of AOC and one camera guy, you don't really establish the scene too well. Between takes, I switched over to the wide-angle lens. I believe it was the 14-24 2.8 Sigma, and I went behind her before the next take, because I love showing the behind the scenes. This is something that you rarely ever see. When it's set up on camera and you just see the camera angle that the video is capturing, you're going to see the perfect setup. In this case, you get to see the behind the scenes. You've got an aide to AOC over to the left-hand side. You've got the tulip table. You've got actually a pretty nice chair on the left-hand side. In the middle, you've got Brian, who's taking a photo of AOC. You've got Spencer working the main camera, and we've got Josh off to the right doing the B camera, and AOC is right in the middle going over her notes. I love the color and contrast in this image. And there you can also see the light that is set up above, and Spencer brought that in, and that light makes everything so much better. But this is what I talk about by establishing a scene. If I didn't rotate back here from that first spot that I was sitting, which was near that tulip table because I was down low shooting photos, if you didn't see this, it wouldn't tell the story as good. And so that's why I rotate to the back, try to show those different angles, and I just love that this captures the behind the scenes, the colors, the tones, the clarity, the contrast, everything about this pops, and that's why this is in my top 3 or 4 photos in the entire book as well. Page 118. Ever since the film days, I've packed a small portfolio of my work in my camera bag. Even when iPhones became the norm, I still carried around a physical photo book. I did this because it's easier to show someone your work as opposed to telling them about your work. This time around, I toted a 12 by 9-inch photo book of my Bernie photos from the 48-hour sprint. I knew if I could run into the right person, the book would be the key to unlocking my access. Guess what? I did run into the right person. The photo book did unlock my access, and as you can tell, I got the shots. Page 119. This is a portrait of AOC, and I probably had about 10 seconds to capture this. See, Brian had just taken a portrait of her, and then I was like, is it all right if I grab a portrait as well? And she said, sure. So I switched over to my portrait lens, sat in the chair where Brian was formerly sitting. You saw that a few pages ago where he was holding up the camera, and started to take portraits. I took about 3 shots, and I realized I was still in silent mode in the camera. Now, this isn't a bad thing being in silent mode, because when she was doing the interview portion and filming her part of the video, you want to be silent because you don't want any noise. You don't want to be the one that bones a shot and then they have to redo it because there's audio. So being able to shoot in silent is great, except for when you're doing portraits, because what happens is you're there shooting pictures. They don't actually hear the shutter going off, which makes them think, are they just staring at me, right? But I explained, I left silent mode on. I got the picture because after a couple of shots, she was kind of looking at me like, are you going to take the picture? And so now I have to remember in the future that when I'm doing portraits and I was in silent mode, I need to switch back out of it so that someone can actually hear the shutter or the shutter sound so they know that you're taking pictures. Pages 120 and 121. We got a nice 2-page spread here of AOC after she was finished in the hotel room doing her interviews, and she's walking over to a hold area before she speaks to the people that are waiting to hear her speak and then listen to the senator speak. What I love about this image is that she's paying no mind to me. She just met me, but I now have all access to do what I need to do, and she's not looking. Or she's not questioning, why am I here? Or are you supposed to be here? She's just going about her business, and I'm going about mine capturing the images. So in this situation, I'd be walking backwards slightly to get the shot, and then I'd quickly turn around so that I don't get run into, especially in a hallway like this. I just love the behind-the-scenes nature that you see her talking to one of her staffers. You've got, I believe it's her boyfriend right behind to the left. You've got another assistant to the right behind her, and then I believe a security guard all the way back in the back. But I just love the hallway shots, the images that other people don't have access to capture. Being able to capture those is what I really look for when I'm taking images. Pages 122 and 123. This is by far my favorite photo of AOC in this book. I love the quiet contemplation that is going on. This is where we were walking to. This was the hold. Again, it's a kitchen area. There's a lot of waiting in kitchen areas to then go on and speak to people. And being that this was LA, there were a lot of celebrities in the other room waiting to hear her speak and then waiting for her to introduce the senator who would come on after her. But what I love about the image is the quiet contemplation. The fact that her head is slightly bowed where she's thinking or just listening to whatever's going on. She's got the microphone up to her face. She's got her arms crossed a little bit. She's relaxed and it's quiet. It's the calm before the storm. It's the same thing with the senator before he goes on. His hands are behind his back, clutching his speech. His head is slightly bowed and he's quiet thinking until it's go time and then you're on. And it's the same thing right here. I love the isolation of the image. The fact that I was able to isolate her from everything else. You've got a couple of people in the background, which I would have preferred not being there, but they are her staffers and they generally are wherever she is. But she is more isolated. The red dress pops. This would not work as a black and white. It just wouldn't make sense. And as a color, it totally works. Pages 124 and 125. This is one of those glue images. I like glue. It keeps things together. It's not the greatest image since sliced bread, but it's showing you the story. We went from walking down the hallway to waiting to go on, and she was in the kitchen area. And this is what's on the other side of the kitchen area where everybody was waiting to hear her speak. You can see that we've got the Bernie placards on the wall, getting ready for Bernie to come in after she's done speaking. We have a lot of celebrities here because it's LA. You've got Jeffrey Ross in the middle of the frame to AOC's left, about 3 heads over. There's probably a bunch of people that I don't recognize who are probably celebrities because just about everybody in this room was. You've got Tim Robbins over to the right. To the left of him, you've got Werner Herzog. You've got Cornel West over to the right-hand side. I actually did get a little selfie with him because I'm like, I love your hair, man. And he kind of liked my hair too because we're very similar. So like I said, this is like the glue in the book. It helps tell the story. And that's why it's here, because she's speaking to all of these people. And I'm sure that you can point out people that I didn't even recognize, but you do need to capture these types of images that may not stand out on their own, but in the entirety of the story, it helps build that story and make it even better. Pages 126 and 127. So we have walking down the hallway, we have waiting to speak, we have speaking, and then we have exiting from where she was speaking back through the kitchen. But I believe the senator had already come into the room because he came in when she was still speaking, and then she introduced him, and then she left. But before all of that happened, I was kind of kicked out of the kitchen area by the new body person, Jesse, for Bernie Sanders. And the thing is he didn't know that it was me. So he kind of, and I'll explain that in just a second, but he was like, you got to go. Like he was like forceful about it, not physically forceful, but he's like, you got to go because the senator was going to come through. And so I went out into the hallway and waited. Then he stuck his head out and he's like, Jared, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was you because we hadn't met yet. And he's like, you're fine to go anywhere you need to go. He's like, so whenever you hear me tell people we got to move and you got to move, we got to clear the area, we got to clear the hallway, that doesn't pertain to you. So you can stay. Everybody else has to go. And that was great. That's why I always try to introduce myself to the security people, whether it's at a concert venue or anywhere, because you want them to know that you belong. And up until this point, I hadn't been introduced to him, but then he was told or that I would be there, and then realized that it's me and I was free to go where I needed to go. And so that's why I was able to go back into the kitchen area and get this shot of AOC coming back out when she was done speaking. Now, this is one of the few times where there's actually eye contact with the camera. I don't know if I startled her when she turned around to exit, but she looked and then she went on her way. But I love the eye contact here. I love the fact that she's framed by the door. I'm actually at a higher angle than I normally would be because I was standing at this point. Normally I would shoot down low like I did when she was waiting to go speak, but she's framed by the door frame. You've got the other parts of the kitchen here. To the right here, you have the refrigerator that she was standing or leaning against. The left, you just have the other stuff from a kitchen, but that's what it is. We're telling the story, and you walk through a ton of kitchens. Pages 128 and 129. Now, there was a small elevator that would take us down from one of the floors down to the basement so that they could walk out and go over to where the rally was on Venice Beach. Now, I wanted to wait to go in the elevator with the senator, but Jesse told me that there wasn't going to be room, so I jumped into the elevator with AOC and a couple of the staffers. And what you can see is there's a conversation going on, and AOC is in the back corner just with a slight smile on her face. And that's what I like about it, is that she's just listening and thinking, and the others are having this conversation. And what I like about it is that they create a natural frame. Yes, this is someone's back of the head, but it's creating a natural frame that draws us in to AOC. And my back is as far against the wall or the elevator as it could be, because this was a tiny elevator, half the size of a normal elevator that you would find at a hotel. And it wasn't for a long ride. Took a couple of pictures like this one, and then we moved on. Pages 130 and 131. So after AOC came out of the elevator, got into an SUV, and then drove the 800 feet to the backstage area at Venice Beach, I knew the senator would be coming down the same elevator at some point. So I camped out in this area, pre-visualized what I wanted, put on the wide angle lens because I wanted to get him exiting the elevator and coming through this door frame. Here you can see he's framed by the door. It's a door frame, but it does create a natural frame that draws your interest right to him. Now, on the right-hand side, you've got Jesse. Some might say that's a distraction or that I shot it too wide, but I like showing the rawness of the scene. We're exiting from the parking garage, or we're exiting into the parking garage where the SUV is waiting, which would then take the senator the couple hundred feet over to the backstage area of the rally. And I know that some people would say that the Rubbermaid thing is a distraction, but I think that that just makes it more real. This is where he's walking. And what's the point of taking a tight picture everywhere? If you take a tight picture everywhere, you don't show the scenes. So that's why I took it with the wide angles, because I like to show the scene. Also, as a quick tip for anybody that's a photographer, it's one thing to shoot wide, but if you're too far away from your subject and they look minuscule, it's not going to work out. So when you shoot wide, you still need to fill the frame with your subject, but showing the surroundings is super important at the same time. Pages 132 and 133. Tight spaces. Hallways, hotel rooms, kitchens, elevators, and motorcades. I constantly find myself in tight spaces, making sure I not only get the shot, but also stay out of the way while doing so. What I find amazing is I flew out to LA with no guarantee I would have access to AOC. And here I was face to face capturing a portrait, taking candids in a hotel room, leading the way down the hallway, crouched down in the kitchen, and crammed into a tiny elevator. All the while, it's as if I'm not even there. What I mean by that is no one's paying attention to me, and that's a good thing. Having the freedom to move around without being questioned is the ultimate superpower for a photographer. To add on to the text that I wrote here is I've always looked for that all access. I never wanted to be the paparazzi style photographer, the person that steals the image of a celebrity that's coming out of a restaurant or coming out of their house. Now, I understand that some PR people tip off photographers because they want to get those photos seen, but I was never the person who was going to try and steal an image of an artist or a musician or a celebrity and then benefit from it. I always felt like if I was standing there, I would be like, is it all right if I take your picture? And if they said no, I wouldn't do it. And then if they saw me the next time and I did the same thing, maybe after a while they'd be like, well, this guy isn't like everybody else. Maybe we could say yes, and maybe they would want to work with me. And this is why I always tried for all access behind the scenes, and you just ask for it. The worst thing that might happen is someone says no, but maybe they end up saying yes. And when you do get those yeses and you do get to go behind the scenes and the artist respects what you do and you respect what they do, you have to know that you cannot lose that trust and respect by putting out an image that shouldn't be put out. You are the last line of defense between putting out something good and something that shouldn't be put out. And so you just have to know what to release and what not to release. And I'm not talking about anything bad being done. I'm just talking about there's a difference between the photograph that's the best of the best and then something that just doesn't work or isn't flattering and it's not indicative of that subject. And so I've never really gone through a place where someone's like, you put out a bad picture, we don't want that out there. You always want to try and maintain that trust, because as soon as you lose that trust, it's basically all over for you. Pages 134 and 135. We've got AOC and her partner trying to peek through the tarp to see how many people were waiting at Venice Beach to hear them speak or to hear her speak. There were a lot of people there. And that's what I kind of like about this image, is that you can't yet see how many people are there. So it's kind of like a lead up in the photo story that will get to what's on the other side of this fence. And that's what I get out of this image. It's like, what are they looking at? Well, I'm going to have the payoff later on, but here it builds that tension until you can get to that point where you see what was on the other side. Now you can see there's part of the American flag stretched between those two, I think they're palm trees, and we'll see that in the next image. But I just liked that they're both looking through here. She's in her heels, looking through the fence. You've got the red, you've got the leather jacket, which actually matches part of the grass down below, and you've got him looking through the fence as well. Pages 136 and 137. So here we have AOC tucked behind the palm tree. You can see the American flag is right above her. You've got different staffers. You've got the security guard right there on the right-hand side. And she's just waiting to be announced by Cornel West, who is speaking up on the stage right now. Now, you still don't get to see the entire crowd. That's going to happen in a couple of more pages. But I just love the waiting right before she goes on, that she's tucked in because she doesn't want the people to know that she's there. I mean, they know that she's there, but she doesn't want to be a distraction. So she's just waiting, thinking. It's quiet. I felt that black and white was much better than the color. In the color, you've got the pop of the American flag, you know, the red, white, and blue. You've got the green of the grass. You've got different color outfits that other people are wearing. And I just felt that that took my eye and my attention away from where I want the viewer's eye to go. And that's the AOC right behind the tree. So when I'm focusing right on her. I'm shooting a little wider in this situation because I know she's going to be walking towards the stage. And if I have a tight lens on and she starts to walk, I don't have an opportunity to change that lens to then get the wider angle. I would be stuck with something tighter, which wouldn't then show you the crowd or show you the scene. Pages 138 and 139. Now we see the pop of color. She's no longer behind the tree, and it's kind of like in Pleasantville, the movie, when they start in black and white and then they end up in color. This just feels much better. The red dress pops. The walk to the stage is happening. It's actually a pretty long walk to the stage. There were a ton of people there, which we still haven't seen just yet. She was just introduced, and that's why she started to walk. I love the way that she's walking here. She's waving, she's smiling. You got the red dress popping, the colors and contrast pop across this image. I also want to point out the palm trees. Now, when you're crisscrossing the country and you're making tons of different stops, it's important to show the scenes where you are in the country or the world, because if you just take everything tight and you can't see the scene, it doesn't matter. It doesn't show where you are. And so when you're crisscrossing the country or the world, you want to show the natural parts of where you're being, and that's important to capture here. I also want to point out that you have Tim Robbins over here to the left-hand side of AOC. He's clapping. I believe this was the VIP area, and she's going to continue her walk to the stage. Pages 140 and 141. So after the long walk and I followed AOC to the stage, she went up the stage, I went up a couple of stairs to get this angle as well, and here she is embracing with Cornel West, who just introduced her. You can see how many people are here from this angle. We've got people on the left, we've got people to the right of the frame, we even had more people behind us and far right of the frame, and we're going to see all of that. But I like this low angle. I like being able to capture this embrace, the slight behind the scenes image, and I also like to say that the staff photographers and creators were already out at the stage capturing Cornel West. You had the press photographers already out there getting ready for AOC and Bernie to arrive as well. And I like to hang back. I like to get the shot where other photographers may not be. So sometimes when photographers go left, I like to go right, or when they all clump together, I try to find a different angle to capture. Now that's not always possible, but in certain situations, I try to do that so I end up with something different. And I like being the only photographer around for a certain thing, because then I'm actually the only person that is capturing that actual moment. Pages 142 and 143. So as I said before, you've got basically a 360-degree set of people all the way around. So there's the back of the stage. There's actually a lot more people behind us, as well as in front and to the left and to the right. So she's making sure that she's talking to everybody. So she works her way around the stage, which is actually pretty good to get mobile on the stage. It's better than just standing there and not doing much. On the left-hand side, you can see where the press photographers are. You also have Brian shooting over there. There's more photographers in the pit. You've got fans to the right. You've got security to the right. And then just to the left of the podium, you have the press riser. And again, you won't find me there basically ever on the press riser because it's flat. It's boring, but it is a good place for the media to tend to be because it gives them a straight shot of this, but it also doesn't give you any dimension to the area. Because like I said a few pages ago, is the palm trees are important. The location is important. And if all you have is a backdrop that is blank or plain, then you don't know where you are, and it's like you're in the same place every single time. Pages 144 and 145. So I love the juxtaposition of these two images next to each other. You have the stoic looking shot on the left. You have the passionate shot on the right. The red pops, you can see the palm trees, but you wouldn't really know that they're palm trees unless you saw the prior images. And as I keep saying throughout the book, the wides, the mediums, the tights, the details. This is me coming in and getting those portraits from the side. I wanted to make sure that I filled the frame for some of the shots and got these nice types of live portraits. And I know that some people will look at the image on the right and be like, this is a woman screaming and that shouldn't be there, and it's showing too much passion, or just a woman screaming becomes a quote unquote a bad thing, and it's not at all. There's nothing wrong with being passionate. And the reason I bring this up is because in the past, if a man is screaming, it may be seen as he's forceful and this is a good thing. And so this is what goes on in our world. People see women sometimes and be like, well, they're yelling or they're crying, and that's a bad thing. Well, men yell and men cry, and it goes both ways. And so that's why I chose this. It's a passionate moment. There's nothing wrong with it at all. And the juxtaposition of these next to each other, I think, works out extremely well. Pages 146 and 147. So while AOC was speaking and all the digital team and all the creators were out there getting video and photos, I went backstage to the backstage area for a couple of reasons. One, I don't need a ton of photos of AOC doing the same thing. Once I get my wides, tights, mediums, all of the stuff that I say, I can move on. I don't need to stay there for 25 more minutes. So I went backstage for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to see if I could run into the senator and his wife or a staffer to show them the 12:9 photo book, because my goal was trying to get the senator flipping through the book to see the images for the documentary so that we could finish the documentary with him flipping through the pages and giving some feedback. Now, I showed his wife Jane the images in the book earlier and she loved them, but there was no opportunity to get video of him looking through the book. So I don't know if she showed it to him or not, because they were waiting in the trailer area because it was air conditioned and it was a little hot out. And so I actually waited backstage for a good 10 minutes by myself while nobody else was there, because AOC was speaking. The senator and his family and staffers were in the air conditioning waiting. And then out of nowhere, they finally came outside, and I saw them standing by these SUVs. And that's when I tucked in, and I knew I didn't want to go tight here because I want you to see that it's the cars, and you've got the fences to the left, and you've got the palm trees once again. And it's an intimate moment that should be captured, I think, from a distance, but not too far away. And so I think they're in the right position in the frame. I think they're the right size. The senator has his hands behind his back once again. He's holding his campaign speech. Jane is smiling, and the senator is listening. And these are the moments I live for, the behind-the-scenes moments that nobody else is around to capture, but because I was patient and because I went away from the normal area, I was rewarded with a shot like this. Pages 148 and 149. So building off the last image, I came around the car. The senator was waiting here for AOC to finish up speaking and to introduce him. And the reason this photo's in the book is because of the sign. It says to the stage or to stage with an arrow pointing on camera beyond this point. And that's to remind you that someone is always looking. Someone will have a cell phone out shooting photos, capturing video, or you'll be on TV beyond this point. So it's just another one of those reminders not to do anything stupid. Not that you would do anything stupid, but someone is always watching. So I just love that he's waiting at the entrance here. You've got Jane with him. Once again, you have the senator clutching his speech behind his back and just listening and waiting to go on. Page 150. Sometimes patience pays off, sometimes it doesn't. Back in college, one of my professors said something that changed my approach to photography. At the time, I was photographing the Philadelphia Flyers, and I was only focused on the action in front of me. He said, "Don't be afraid to look behind you." He went on to explain that there's more to the story than just action shots. There's the little girl sitting with her dad eating ice cream in the stands. There's the kid leaning on the dasher with the ice reflecting in his eyes. There's a whole lot you're leaving out by just focusing on what's in front of you. That statement right there changed my photography forever. It opened my eyes to the behind-the-scenes world. It allowed me to take the blinders off to see the full picture. I found myself in the backstage area waiting for a moment to present itself. The senator was in a trailer with his family staying cool, AOC was on stage giving her speech, and the digital team was out front getting content. Though I may not be the most patient person in everyday life, when it comes to photography, I will wait hours for the potential opportunity to get the shot. Sometimes patience pays off, and other times it doesn't. This time around, it certainly paid off. Page 151. This is patience paying off. This is the reward you get when you put yourself in a situation to be successful. The low angle from behind, I think, makes this image. AOC is about to introduce the senator. You've got the embrace going on between Jane and Bernie. In Bernie's left hand, you have a Dodgers hat that someone gave him that I guess he was going to put on for a second because they were in LA. You've got the American flag. You've got the news helicopter off to the right-hand side. I love having the fence here. You've got the fence that draws you into the subjects, and then even beyond the subjects, you have the barricades where people are waiting for the senator. You can see they're waving, they're taking photos. You also have Brian down to the left-hand side shooting. I see that he's there when I'm shooting, and I don't want to bone his shot. So I make sure that I'm pretty much out of his way because I think I'm tucked in behind one of the fences. I feel that this is a more powerful shot from the back than it would be from the front, because if I got this shot from the front, you would just see the backstage area or you would just see more fences. And so being able to see the American flag between the two palm trees, being able to see the people out there waiting, this is telling the story. This is what is about to happen. They're about to go out there, and that's what's going to happen when we turn the page. Pages 152 and 153. And now we're starting to see the long walk to the stage. You can see all the people lined up on the left-hand side. We still don't have an entire overview of the crowd to see how large it is, but we went from seeing AOC looking through the fence. Then we saw a little bit more of the people when she was speaking, and now we start to see even more as the senator is walking and waving towards the stage. not the easiest shots to capture. One, I don't want to bone Josh's shot. He's right there to the left of the senator. But then I also, too, understand that there's a lot of people that are going to be in the background, so it's not that big of a deal if I'm seen there because I'm part of the crew. So it's all right to be seen in this situation. But the shot from the behind, again, I think works with him waving. And it's not the easiest thing to capture when you're on the move. This is why you need to have the right lens on for this situation because you can't switch. You don't have any time to switch. Honestly, unless you're carrying multiple cameras, then you could switch between one and the other. But even that leads to you missing the shot that you were trying to get. So I love that the wave is happening. I love that you've got people taking pictures and waving and holding banners all the way around. And you can also see the stage where we are walking to, where the senator is going to go up and give his speech. Pages 154 and 155. So the senator and Jane went up onto the stage. I stayed down on the side stage with the wide angle to get the shot. I wanted to show AOC in the background, the palm trees, the podium, the people, the stool, the press, everybody. I'm also glad I didn't cut off the senator's fingers in this case because I'm not a big fan of cutting things off in images, but it worked out here. And you might be thinking, why did I go black and white here? Color probably would have been fine, but it just felt right in black and white. For whatever reason, at the time I was editing it, I was like, yeah, the black and white works. I love how AOC is smiling. I love the wave that the senator has. And I just like the overall story that continues to be told. We were backstage, we were waiting, we were walking, and now we are up on the stage. Pages 156 and 157. This is one of those images that I would have preferred to have from a much higher angle from further back. You want to get them raising their arms, but you don't get a sense of the crowd. You only see what's around you. Now, the reason I have the shot here is because these photos happen seconds apart. And in the back of the book, we've broken it down so you can see by the second when a picture was taken, so that sometimes it's literally a second apart or there's multiple images taken across the same second. So I don't have a chance to quickly run back after walking out with him to get this shot. So I had to choose which image I was going to get, and the walkout image is what I wanted, and this was the other image that I could capture. I don't think it's the strongest in the book, but I think it's important to show the hands raised and the embrace that's going on here. I would have liked to have been further away, but there was no way that I could possibly do that. And that's why multiple people, multiple staffers, multiple photographers working together can cover all the angles. Like when Sports Illustrated used to cover the Super Bowl, they have 20 different photographers that all have a specific area to focus on that they know they have everything covered. In this case, I'm just one person, and this is the shot that I ended up with. Pages 158 and 159. So now that we can see the senator and Jane behind AOC here on stage, AOC is exiting the stage. We've got everything here. We've got a story from AOC speaking inside, waiting in the kitchen, walking back out through the kitchen, to the elevator, downstairs, waiting backstage, going up on stage. This is storytelling. And so I wanted to capture her coming down the stairs. The red pops. And while everybody's focus has now shifted to the senator, I have this photo of AOC coming down the stairs to walk back to the backstage area and basically wait to come back out at the very end. Now would be a good time to bring up that you probably noticed that a lot of the images starting off this chapter are of AOC and not really of the senator. So why was I focused on her? And the truth of the matter is I wanted to get out there and capture AOC because she's an important figure in our history and in our government right now, and you never know where that's going to lead. Are these going to be iconic images in the future of her just at the beginning or close to the beginning of her political career, or will they not? But also I already had a lot of images of the senator from the 48-hour sprint, and I thought that this was going to be great for the story. Plus, a lot of the places he was speaking in the hotel, I don't need those shots, right? They weren't very interesting to me. They weren't interesting rooms. The lighting was terrible, and they just would have been more snapshotty, and that's why I spent more time with AOC leading up to this point. Pages 160 and 161. This is the payoff shot. I've been talking about there's a lot of people here. You've seen the behind the scenes. You've seen a couple of people here and there, and now you see everything. There are a ton of people there. I'm standing up on that really tall ladder, and you saw a picture of me at the beginning of the book where my introduction is, where I'm on that ladder. And so someone was taking a picture of me on the ladder, taking a picture of this. And that's what I love. I mean, look at everybody here. They all have their signs up. When they don't have their signs up, I didn't take the picture because it wouldn't be as good of a picture until they all hold up the Bernie signs. I shot this really wide, and you can see the senator is in the center of the stage and it's really far away. That's fine. You know who's there, you know the situation, and so it doesn't need to be a super tight shot because then it would be boring. In this case, we have all the palm trees. We can see that it's Venice Beach. I think it's important at every rally, and especially outdoor rallies, to show the scene. They're place markers, right? They're like on a map. So if you showed a map and you clicked on a certain city, this wide photo would show up. It was very similar to when I was on tour with Perry Farrell in 2007. And at every venue we stopped at and where the tour bus was parked, I tried to take a picture. Like we had Aspen, Colorado, and it was amazing. And we had Washington, D.C. We had all these different places, and you get the picture. But this really encompasses how many people were there and the excitement that was brewing for hopefully having the senator become the Democratic nomination for president. Pages 162 and 163. While the senator was speaking, AOC was back here listening. And this is the true behind the scenes. All of the other photographers and other people are focused on the stage, and I'm focused here, the real deal behind the scene images. So when I came off the ladder from getting that wide shot, I saw that AOC was here listening. She's behind the tree. It's truly behind the scenes. You've got the fence on the left and the fence on the right that draw you in. They're leading lines. They're also a natural frame that brings you into AOC here. But what also brings you more into her is that it's black and white. The color was too distracting. Where does your eye go? Does it go to the green grass? Does it go to the other people? Does it go to the flags? In this case, I wanted it to go to AOC, and I love the quiet contemplation, the thinking, the listening, and the truly she's just here by herself while everyone else is out there listening. Pages 164 and 165. So the speeches have ended. We have the rope line that's going on, and you have this moment that's frozen in time. It's a selfie going on between AOC and that person. You've got the security guard on the right. You've got Spencer, who's shooting video for the campaign right behind AOC. You can actually see Jesse, the body man, not Jesse the Body Ventura, but Jesse the body man, who's in the back out of focus because that's where the senator is. And you can see that I cut her toe off. I'm not a big fan of cutting things off in images. It's just that you have to realize that this stuff is happening so fast. You're walking backwards with a couple of photographers and a couple of video people. You're trying not to trip over the stanchions from the barricades because they're there, and you try to get close to the barricade and you walk backwards, you might trip and fall, and that's the last thing that you want to do. That's still no excuse for cutting off her toe. That just bothers me. I know it won't bother most of the other people out there, but I just kind of wanted to bring that up to point that out, that I try not to cut the subject's hands and feet and toes off at awkward places. But you just have to realize how fast this stuff happens. It's really fast. They're walking through because the quicker they can do this, it's safer, then they can get out there and move on to the next stop. Pages 166 and 167. I love the embraces here. I love the black and white, the classic nature of the shot. The security guards on the left, you can obviously see they have their glasses on. They look very official. You've got Jesse on the left-hand side, the senator right in the middle, embracing handshakes. He's actually walking towards AOC, and there was a point that they actually crossed each other, and that was pretty cool to see because they whispered something. I don't know what it was. It was probably more along the lines of, let's wrap it up. We've got to move on to something next. But this is the last image in this section. And what started out with not knowing if I would even have the access to get what I needed ended with some really what I think are classic images. And I'm happy with the results that I got. And when the senator and the team and the staff jumped back in the motorcade and I was walking now towards the hotel, they were not yet in the car. They were waiting to leave the backstage area, and I was walking, and then they went past me, and once again, they were on the road to somewhere else, and I was left by myself to think about what I just did, and I felt really good about what I did. I was now on the other side of the velvet rope because I was no longer in the motorcade. I was just by myself thinking about what I did. Yeah, I was really happy with the results I ended up getting. I mean, for a couple of hours of shooting, all of the AOC stuff, all of the Bernie stuff, the entire story, that's what I aim for. I aim for every time I go out to shoot, am I able to tell the best story possible? And in this case, I think I was able to do that once again. Pages 168 and 169, Iowa Caucus, February 2nd and 3rd, 2020. This could be the start of something big, or it all could be over just like that. Look at that date, February 2nd and 3rd of 2020. We already started to hear that there was something going on in Wuhan, China. We knew that there was I guess, potentially a pandemic, but did we ever think that it would spread to a global pandemic? And the answer is no. But this was right around that point. That's the insane thing to look back at, is that it was coming. Within the next month, the country would shut down. By March, it was shutting down. And that obviously would throw a monkey wrench into the rest of the campaigning, but I'll talk more about that at the very end of this. Going back out to Iowa for the caucuses, I got another last-minute call to book a flight that they would have me back out once again to capture the caucuses. I flew in the night before to Des Moines, but I knew in the morning I'd have to get up super early and go all the way across the state to meet the campaign, who would then spend the rest of the day coming all the way back to Des Moines. Now, I wasn't sure if they had Uber, which they did, and it was going to be a super expensive Uber ride across the state because it was like an hour and a half or 2-hour drive. So I reached out on Instagram, or I put out a message, and I was like, does anybody live in Des Moines and would like to give me a ride, and I'll pay you for that? And I did get a message from a guy, and he picked me up in the morning and drove me all the way across the state, and we talked the whole time, and I paid him. I don't think he even wanted to get paid, but I was like, no, you're taking my money, because I knew how much the Uber would cost, and so I wanted to at least get him money to cover gas, cover his time, and then have some more. So I believe he just got married or he just got engaged. I'm like, here, go out to a nice dinner, right? And so I wanted to make sure that I took care of him because he helped me get to where I needed to go. Now, where I needed to go was the hotel where the press van was going to be leaving from. Now, this is different from the motorcade van. This is the press pool, the people who do not have all access, the people who are shuttled around and told where they could shoot from. So that's who I needed to meet up with, and I met with them in the lobby of the hotel. I then got into the press vehicle. I knew I had to be more quiet than normal because I don't want them to know that I'm really on the inside, and I don't want to say anything that I shouldn't say because this is press, and they will write anything. They're always looking for a scoop. And so I rode over with them to the first stop, and I realized that I do not want to be in this press vehicle after this. I don't want to be clumped in with the people that don't have all access when I could have all access. We'll figure out what happens along the way, but that takes us to the next page. Pages 170 and 171. Now you see all of the Bernie placards on the wall. The reason they are there is because the rally was supposed to happen inside. But too many people showed up. There was a line going all the way around the back of the building, and there was going to be no room to get in. So they made the last-second decision to move it outside. There was a slightly gradated parking lot, which would be pretty good for people to see the senator speak. But I remember being out there and they're trying to figure out where the press is going to go. They're like, we should be back here. And I was like, well, that's not a good place. People's heads are going to be in the way. And they ended up being off to the right-hand side, which you will see in a couple of images. So instead of the senator waiting in his tour bus to come inside to speak in this room, This ended up being the new hold. So the room was completely emptied out. All of the press cameras that were already set up had to be broken down and taken outside to the new location. And this is where they were waiting. I love having all of the placards on the wall. I love the wide nature of the shot to show you the empty space. Police officer to the left. You've got Ari directing here. You've got Jesse sticking his head through the door, giving the warning, or this is what's going to happen soon. You've got the senator, his grandkids, part of his family, and they're just waiting. Pages 172 and 173. Now, this image is very similar to the 2-page spread before, but the reason I'm putting it here is it's building the story. We had the waiting. Now we have the walking, and then after this, we'll get to the actual speech. But I like the movement going through the door. I like that it says to stage with the arrow, which is where Ari is right by the door, and the senator is starting to walk outside. And the difference between this and the last image is that now you can see all the way to outside, so you see where he's about to walk. Pages 174 and 175. This was one of the harder locations to shoot from, because clearly I can't really go in front of the senator to get a shot. I would just end up getting a building picture as a background. You can see where all the people ended up standing, and you have the press off to the left-hand side. As you can see the news cameras, you can see the press photographers taking photos. Now would be a good time to tell you how I got away from the other press people and where I was really supposed to be shooting from, which is where they're shooting from. Before this whole thing started, I was in contact with Ari, who is the deputy campaign manager, and he was letting me know they're on their way. And I kept walking away from the other press photographers around to the front of the building where the senator was going to be dropped off. And the one staffer who was driving the press vehicle and whose job was to wrangle all the press people was like, you can't be here, you can't do this. And I was being nice. I was just like, okay. I was just really waiting for Ari, because I knew when Ari showed up, I'd be like, Ari, get me away from the press pool. I need to have all access. And so finally, when Ari got there, I walked back to the front. Ari told the guy that, yep, he's with us, he's fine. And that's how I ended up in the room getting the 2 spreads before this. And it was really important to get away from the press photographers because they have no access. They are told where to be, and they try to get extra access because they're trying to get something different. And it's very difficult to get something different when you're told where you can be. Plus, I didn't want to be in the press vehicle. And so before we left this scene, I was like, Ari, do you have room in the motorcade for me? And there was room in the lead car. So I ended up in the lead car for the rest of the day and finally away from the press people. There's just something about obviously having all access is a hell of a lot better than being told that you can only do X, Y, and Z. And so that's how I ended up getting back into the motorcade and away from the press vehicle for the rest of the day. Pages 176 and 177. No matter how bad a location is, I'm trying to find an image. I'm trying to find the best angle possible. So I went inside. We had the security guy here on the left-hand side. We have a natural door frame drawing you into the senator. And we have what's called a merger coming out of his head that I just noticed for the first time ever, is that there's a pole coming out of the top of the senator's head. Generally, I wouldn't recommend doing that. It just so happened that this could be the only angle that I could get. And more honestly, I didn't even notice it in the shots. And now that you see it, does it bother you? Let me know. Just tell the book, say it to the page. Yes, this bothers me, or no, this doesn't bother me. It really doesn't bother me in this case, but it's one of those rule of thumbs. You try not to have mergers with objects coming out of people's heads. But what is actually interesting is that after the day here, I got a lot of messages and posts on my social media about me being in the background of a lot of news reports for the day. So anywhere around the world that they did a news report on the senator speaking in this location, you can see a afroed photographer with an I Shoot Raw hoodie on looking for the images in the background of the frame of all of the press photos and all of the press coverage from the news. And so if you look up the date, I believe February 2nd, and you look up Iowa and you look up on C-SPAN or something, you will see me in the background of a lot of the news coverage. Pages 178 and 179. So before the senator finished up speaking, I went back into this room where it all started. And this helps wrap up the story, the photo story of him waiting, walking through the door, giving the speech, photo of him giving the speech with the door frame, and now coming back in to this area. I chose to go wide. I liked the emptiness, the void of the space. You have the police person to the left, you've got one of his grandkids to the right, but the focus goes right to the door and the senator who's framed perfectly in the doorway coming back into the room. Plus it says Bernie all over the wall and he's walking in. Now in hindsight, I love the wide. There was also another image that did present itself here that I didn't see because I went wide, but that would have been to fill the frame tightly from the left door frame to the right where it says Bernie. And literally what you would have had is a tight shot of Bernie coming through the door and all of the Bernie signs. I think both would have worked. I just went with the wider, and I really do love the wide. You don't always need to have a super tight shot of the person you're photographing. The scene that you're in helps tell the story even better sometimes, and that's why I went wide, and that's why I like this shot. Pages 180 and 181. You see this jacket that Jesse is handing to the senator? That is the famous jacket from the inauguration where Bernie had the mittens. He wore the same jacket. Yep, it was out there on the road with us, and it's his jacket, so he's always wearing it. This is us leaving. We're getting ready. Bernie's going to be going on to the tour bus that's waiting. The family's going on the bus. Jesse's going on the bus. I was supposed to be in the press vehicle, but I asked Ari if I could get into the first car, and he said, yep, there's room, and that's the best. But yeah, we've got the senator walking out. I just love the behind-the-scenes moments. It's what gets you from point A to point B, and not just what's in front. And so getting the family walking to the bus and getting the senator leaving here, there were a lot of stops on this day. This was the day before the caucus. At that point, the campaigning is over, because once the caucuses happen, you now have a score. You now have someone in the lead. And so there's going to be people that drop off. And so on this day, we had so many stops. I think there were 4 or 5 or 6 different stops that we were doing. So you'd spend 15, 20 minutes during a speech at one place, get back in the vehicles, go to another place, go to the front of a building and speak, go to the back of the building and speak to different people. I mean, it was a busy, nonstop day. Pages 182 and 183. The next stop was at another campaign office, and again, there was overflow and an influx of people. So the back room had already filled up to capacity. So they sent people around to the front where the senator's bus pulled up. You can see the bus in the background, and you can see the Bernie 2020 sign hanging there on the window. And so he was stopping here to do another shorter stump speech before walking around the building to go to where the main speech was going to be given. But what I like about this image, you can see there's an AOC calendar on the wall. You've got the Bernie 2020 with his logo with red glasses. You have Bernie lawn signs down there at the bottom left-hand corner. You actually see a phone on the left-hand side as well of one of the staffers texting. There's a lot of texting and notes that go back and forth to make sure everything's on point. You can see some of the different press and media people out in front. And you can also see that it wouldn't have been a good place for me to shoot in the crowd, because then I would just have a picture of a door or an outside area. Again, I'm using the natural frame, draws you into the senator. You have his banner hanging there, and then bottom right, or more near the middle of the frame, but you see Brian on the ground trying to find a unique angle. I actually like the fact that I got Brian in the image. I think that's part of the entire story. And so this was just a quick stop. I think there was maybe 5 or 10 minutes that he spoke to these people before going around to the back. Pages 184 and 185. Behind the scenes, we've got staffers working, sending emails, sending texts, making sure everything's on point. And I like that you can see the back end of a campaign office. Again, you have the signs right in the middle. You've got the flags. You've got sayings on the wall. You have people that have signed the wall on the left-hand side. It's not a glamorous office by any stretch, but I kind of like that you can read the tape on the floor, that there's notes everywhere. The speaker that's outside is plugged in right in the wall in the middle, and that's a speaker that the senator is using. And it's all right that I don't have the senator in this image because we already know that I photographed him right before, and you can, through the process of elimination, realize that this is just right after chronologically, and chronological order puts it that way. And so we've got staffers right here working. And as I always say, it's important to make sure you see behind the scenes, and that's why I captured this one. Pages 186 and 187. I love these walking type shots to the back of the building. I ran ahead, switched over to, I believe, the Sony A9 for shooting these because it shot a little faster, and started walking backwards to get the wider shot. I love the hard shadow. I love the foot position. That's exactly what I've been talking about and what I like. I like that his head's down, he's walking to the back. I mean, I honestly like that he's just walking out in the open. And yes, there's the extra security that's there. You've got Jesse right here on the right-hand side that you can read. It says Bernie, all access around his neck. That's kind of a cool little Easter egg that's hidden there. You've got the not me, us on the tour bus back there. And you have staffers that are holding back the press photographers, because I remember the press photographers were trying to get closer, trying to get more access, and they were being told, no, like, you got to stay here. We got to walk to the back. I like that there's snow on the ground because it's February. I just like the feel of the shot because you have all the chaos that goes on around. And the senator in this case doesn't seem fazed by any of it. He's just in his brain thinking about what he just said, and then probably thinking about what he's going to say when he gets into the next little stop. I kind of think of it like maybe this is the respite that he gets. Yes, it may be like 2 to 3 minutes of rest, but when you're on, and when you need that quick break, you get that quick break. Pages 188 and 189. This is literally a rope line. He's walking in, you can see the exit, you can see Jesse in the background, you can see some media following behind him. The press photographers were already set up in the room to the left of this image, and this is truly a rope line. So he's going down, he's shaking hands. It's black and white because the color is terrible. There's not a lot of good color in this room because you have the fluorescent lights, and that's why this one went to black and white. And also, another thing going through my mind is I noticed that there's only one exit. And that's the way we just came in. And I didn't see any other ways out of this space other than this front entrance, which is concerning sometimes. I mean, I try to be hyper aware of my situation in case you need to get out. Where do we need to go? And I do that in every room that I go to, or at least I try to. And so in this situation, I noticed that seemed to be the only way out. That's just one of those curious things that you want to be aware of when you're in these situations, so you know where to go if something happens. And yeah, it's just something I'm aware of. Pages 190 and 191. You can see this room is packed. You also don't see any of those exits I was talking about. There was just the one that was where the senator came in for the rope line. It is standing room only. Now, there are some seats for people, but everybody is packed in. You've got the press right down in the front. You have some really terrible lighting because it's just fluorescence, right? It's nothing special. That's why it's black and white. But there's an interesting thing here going on. To the right of the frame, you have this photographer right here who at the time had a brand new camera that wasn't even out yet that he was testing out for Canon. It was the 1DX Mark III. I had some good conversations with him in the morning before I got in the press vehicle. But at some point during the day, he stopped me and he said, how did you get all access? Like, how are you back there? Because, of course, they see me in all the situations where they're not able to go. He's like, are you working for the campaign? And I'm like, no, I'm not. He's like, who are you shooting for? I'm like, I'm shooting for myself. And people find it so odd that I'm not shooting for a publication. I'm not shooting for the campaign. I'm actually shooting for myself. And I like it that way. I love that I'm in control. I'm not on a deadline. And these guys are all shooting, and then in the press vehicle, they're delivering the images right away because they have to get it out onto the wire in case some news happens and they have to get it out into the world. But I've just found it interesting that he's like, how did you get access? I'm just like, they called me. Pages 192 and 193. This is truly behind the scenes. This is not something I would have had access to if I was with the press. See, the press was on their way to the next campaign stop. We had about 45 minutes to an hour until that campaign rally was to take place, and we were pretty close. And so the senator and Jane and their family and the grandkids, they wanted to stop and take a walk. The tour bus pulls off into a neighborhood, and they get off the bus. The senator puts on that famous jacket, which wasn't made famous just yet, and they just started to walk. And so I saw the senator go off on his own like this, and Brian said, we need to stay back just a little bit. Try to stay back. You don't want him to see you, because if he does, he may tell you we don't need or we don't want any more pictures. So I stayed back as best as I could, but I knew that if there was an opportunity that presented itself, I was going to try and get the picture. And if he says no more, but I already got the shot, then we'd be good. So I have no idea who he was on the phone with. I kept the distance because I didn't really want to get in the way before we even started walking. So I got the shot. He walked down the street even further by himself. He walked back up the street. I took a couple of pictures, but then he meets up with the family and it becomes even better. Pages 194 and 195. When I was taking this image, the thought that went through my mind was this could potentially be the president and the first lady one day. And if I have a shot like this, where they're hand in hand, walking across the street, walking down the street, this could be an important image. Now, they're not playing it up to the camera because Brian and I are there. This is what they do. They love each other. These are real people. They go and they take walks, and they're not playing it up for the cameras because they're not there. The press isn't there. So this is real. This is the access that I constantly talk about. Being in a place where you can get things that other photographers aren't able to get. And that's what starts to set you apart when you can get this access. After I got off the road with them, I actually created a photo book, and I sent the family the photo books because I like to do leave behinds. It also makes a big impression. I also blew up this image and had it printed on a metal print and sent it to them as well. The reason I do that is, one, I love giving the gift of photography, but two, it's better to look at a physical, tangible thing that you can hold on to, and it's not just someone emailing you pictures that you look at and then you kind of forget. And what is really funny is during the Super Tuesday broadcast, one of Bernie's sons took a picture and posted it on Twitter, and that photo went viral because it was the chair. It was Bernie's junk chair. It was at his house and everything was piled up on it. We all have a junk chair or something that we pile stuff on at your house. And sitting on top of that chair was this photograph as a metal print sitting there. So it went viral, and that photo is prominently placed, and it was kind of funny. So that's why I give people the gift of photography. And one of the other reasons is I wanted to make a big impression just in case he did become president. I wanted to be asked to be the presidential photographer, the president's photographer. I would have loved to have had that opportunity. And of course, I would have loved to have had that opportunity. Of course, it didn't come to that. I mean, I would have accepted, because how do you turn down that job? But I do a lot of those things, the leave behinds, the prints, because it makes an impression. One, love giving the gift of photography, and two, it makes people remember you because you gave them something so nice. Page 196 and 197. So here's the senator walking with his grandkids. Now, before this, they were having a snowball fight. Well, the kids were. I was hoping that Bernie would pick up a snowball and give it a throw, or maybe get hit by a snowball, but just the kids were throwing it back at each other. And I have a couple of photos for that, but it just didn't fit into the context of the book to use a 2-page spread to put that in there. But this is a great loving moment. I love seeing him have his arm over his granddaughter's shoulder, seeing the other grandson walking ahead, and they're just walking down this development. And I'm thinking, what if someone looks out their window? Are they going to be like, is that Bernie Sanders walking down our street? Or was there nobody home? Were they at work? And that's the interesting thing. It would have been very interesting if someone noticed and they came outside. That would have been interesting. I'll tell you that much. But these walking photos are really important. They're the behind the scenes of the behind the scenes that you don't get to see, and being able to capture it and share it is still really important to me. So this is going to be the last image that we see from this stop. I had a bunch more, and there was even one where he was walking with his grandkid towards me, and he saw me, and he's like, okay, no more photos. But that was already at the very end. And another thing is, when he was walking with his granddaughter and grandson, Jane turned around and was like, look, get this. So she was actually encouraging me to walk forward to get the shots. And that's why I didn't want to hang back too far. You know, I try to push the limits as much as I can, and at least I can get the shot. But she knew we were there to get these pictures. And as she wrote in the foreword, it's great to have these type of images from the road. And so I was close by. She moved out of the way and she's like, yeah, get this shot. And so that's how I ended up getting some of these better shots. Now, after he saw me and was like, no more photos, we all started to walk back to the bus. I went to the other side of the street. I went on a sidewalk on one side, and the family was walking back, and I missed an opportunity for a photo. There was a photo where they all walked through a crosswalk, kind of Beatles-esque, and I was late. I missed it. I was on the other side, just like, all right, I'm done. He told me he didn't want any more photos. Of course, he wouldn't have known if I got that photo, but they all started to walk across, and I got the tail end, and I was like, darn, that's a missed opportunity. But there is a picture that does come up soon where, because I missed that shot, I wasn't going to miss that other shot. Pages 198 and 199. I love the coming through the curtain shot. I was prepared for this one. At the next campaign stop, again, it wasn't a big location, but the hold was right behind this curtain and this wall. So I went on the other side. I saw that the Bernie things were on the wall. The Bernie beats Trump was also on the wall. And so I was waiting for him to come out. So I listened, because you hear when he's about to come out. So as soon as he moved the curtain aside, the autofocus went right to his eye, right where it needed to be. I snapped off a couple of photos, and I got this one. I just love that he has to walk past the regular people just standing there. I mean, he's a regular guy. He just so happens to be a senator, but these other people are clapping and waiting for him to get there. Now, the person taking a cell phone photo on the other side so happens to be Brian's wife, who jumped on the trail for a couple days at this point to just come out, which is great. One of the other questions I get about this is, what does Bernie beats Trump mean? That's a great question. I believe that what those posters meant is, based off of the polling, that Bernie would beat Trump in a head-to-head campaign or a head-to-head battle. Who knows if that would have been the case? I'm not a big fan of polls. I think polls are complete and utter BS, but that's what they were going by. They were trying to be like, well, Bernie beats him head-to-head, which means they might have been trying to say that nobody else would be able to do that. Pages 200 and 201. Once again, you can see there's a ton of people packed into the campaign office, and the senator's right in the middle speaking to everybody. Back by the entranceway, you have the press. That's where they're set up. Everybody that's in the van is over there, and you've got the news media and the press photographers. To the right, you see a photographer holding up a camera shooting over his head. I'm pretty sure that was a New York Times photographer who was trying to get a different angle, and I don't blame him, because I am also standing up on some sort of fixture that allowed me to get a higher angle, because if I didn't have a high angle, then it would just be a boring shot. I guess I would have liked to have kept the Bernie sign a little bit more on the left-hand side, if I'm being a little critical of my own work, but I like his positioning in the frame. We also have Jane down there as well, and we just have all the supporters. So there's not a ton to say about this, but this is all grassroots. This is what you see across the country. It's not always glamorous. It's these type of spaces where they make the phone calls and they do mailers and they try to do their best. So it's pretty cool to be able to see this type of thing. Pages 202 and 203. Now, this was right at the last campaign rally before the caucus would happen the next day. And again, there was more people that showed up that could get into the venue. So behind it, they had an overflow area. And when they told the senator that there were people waiting that couldn't get in, he's like, I want to speak to them. So they got a microphone set up out there, and he went up to the top of the stairs. You can see Brian on the right-hand side taking a couple of photos. You got Jesse on the right-hand side. You also have the security guy And I'm always fascinated by the passes that fell there. I don't recall whose passes they were. They didn't stay there after. Someone did pick them up, but I'm always curious whose were they, because they definitely weren't mine. On the left-hand side, you've got the media camera set up. You've got the microphones. Right next to the railing, I didn't even realize this for a while, but that's a boom mic. Someone raised the boom mic from one of the media stations so that they could capture the audio from up there. Because at a bigger rally, they have a way of feeding the audio directly into the cameras, but I think it's called a moth box. It has like 30 or 50 XLR inputs or outputs that everybody would plug into, and then they can go right into their cameras to get the audio feed. But I thought it was just cool to see that microphone sticking up right there. I love what the senator's doing. I like the tones. The black and white just works out much better, and I just overall like the feel of the shot. Pages 204 and 205. This image was a late addition to the book because on its own, I mean, I like it on its own, but it doesn't have a ton of context. But after you see the pages before, you know that it's a little wider. And I just liked this look. I liked the natural frame that I was able to get using something on the left-hand side and the right-hand side to draw us into the senator who's focused on something. I like how he's holding the microphone. I like the tones on his face for the black and white. And it was a late addition because, you know what? It's my book. It doesn't matter how many pages we put in there. And I figured I like the image. Let's just get it into the book. Pages 206 and 207. After the senator came down those stairs, we walked around the back of the building and they were going to walk up this alleyway. Now, I wanted to run ahead because I love getting the moving shots. I love getting the walking shots. You've got Jesse on the left. You've got security flanking. You've got Misty. You have another campaign person on the right-hand side out of focus. You've got Jane there as well. And I ran ahead, walked backwards, got the shot of them coming up the alley. Then they walk past me and they go into the campaign rally where I actually didn't take any photos. There were too many people in there and there wasn't going to be a place to get a good angle. So I stayed outside because there were these garage doors that, of course, you could see through. And I thought maybe I could get an interesting shot from there, but that wasn't going to be because there really wasn't any good lighting inside. Now, I probably should have put a picture here of him leaving the venue because I have one where he's waving and then you can see the bus in the background. But this basically wrapped up everything leading up to the actual Iowa caucus, which was going to happen the next day. Pages 208 and 209. This is the next day. The Iowa caucus was going on all day, and this was leading up to the announcement of who was going to win the Iowa caucus. Now, we basically had a free day to not do very much. The senator was with his family, so there were no pictures to be taken. So we just hung out as a group and went over to the hotel, which was the campaign headquarters for the night. That's where all of the supporters are, and that's where the senator would come out and accept victory or talk about moving on to the next state and hoping we do better or whatever would end up being. So around 6 to 6:30, I showed up at the hotel. Ari was here doing a little presser for the embedded press corps. These are the people that are out there the whole time. They're on the planes. They're asking questions. They're always angling, looking for something. You can see that the news is on in the back on the projectors because this is like an overflow press room for not everybody could get into the main room. So they had this set up. And so Ari is just running the press. They're asking questions. He's either deflecting away because there's not an answer to be had, or he's just answering it directly. Pages 210 and 211. So here we have Ari in a back hallway hacking away at his phone because the Iowa caucuses turned out to be an absolute debacle. Nothing was working right. None of the systems for submitting the scores or the tallies were working right. And so there was a lot of confusion as to what was going on. The senator was expected to at least come out and speak to declare victory or say, we're going to get him on the next one around 8 o'clock. This picture was taken at 10:36 p.m. So for a couple of hours, no one knew what was going on. They weren't going to be able to have a winner if they couldn't actually count everything properly. And so here's Ari getting information from different places, trying to run the tabulations to see, based off of their internal numbers, how they were doing. And this hallway is where the senator would be walking to get out onto the stage to speak to his supporters. And so part of getting the shot with Ari, and it was seeing if I could get a good shot of the senator coming out. And what ended up happening is when they finally did start to walk to come out, Jesse was leading the way, and Jesse's a big guy, and I couldn't even see the senator. So I quickly ran to get the next photo, because when we get to that, this is one of my favorite photos. So let's jump and turn the page. Pages 212 and 213. So for a couple of hours, I had the idea that I wanted to get a shot of the senator walking through the kitchen. One, because it's that photo I missed the day before where they were walking as a family through the intersection and the crosswalk. And two, I just love wide shots in kitchen areas, and I thought this would be a great place to do it. And so the page before, you saw where Ari was. Now, I didn't know that Jesse was going to be leading the way. So I was in the hallway waiting to get the shot of the senator coming down. And as soon as I saw that Jesse was in the front blocking the senator's view, or my view, to get the photo, I quickly bailed back into the kitchen. I only had a matter of like 5 or 6 seconds to change from the lens that I had on, to get the wide angle set, and to get into position to get them walking through this area. And right as I saw them turning the corner is right when I turned the camera on, and through instinct, focus point went to where I needed it to go. I snapped off a bunch of pictures with the Sony A9, and they were gone before you knew it. I just love the kitchen shot. To me, it's classic. The senator's walking through. He's being led by Jesse. You've got Jane there. You've got the grandkids. You've got other people from the staff, and they're going through the kitchen. The reason this is a wide shot is because you want to see the area. If it's a tight shot of them walking, it's a tight shot of them walking. I know I've said it a lot, but I just love how you see all of the ovens to the right and the wash stations to the left and the table right in the middle. And it's just one of those awesome, awesome shots. Pages 214 and 215. This is the senator finally coming out and speaking to the constituents and all the supporters and saying, we don't know what's going on yet. We don't know if we won, but our internal numbers are showing that it's looking really good. And so it's not the ending to the day that everybody wanted. I honestly wanted to get up into the hotel room while the family was waiting to try and get some good photos of them watching the news and just hanging around, but I wasn't able to get up there because they wouldn't let me in. That's okay. That's the game you play. You'll win some, you'll lose some, but you have to ask. As I always say, and I've said it before in the book, the worst thing that they can say is no, and at some point they might end up saying yes. So I wanted to get a shot of him up here on the stage, and it's actually kind of a happy accident what happened here. With the camera that I was using and the way that the lights were flickering, you kind of pick up some of that flicker. And that's that darker band that's going through his hand. It's also where his chin is, and it's also at the top of his head. But the way that it works and the way that it frames his eyes makes it seem like it was meant to be that way. And so even though it's one of those things where I picked up an imperfection or something with the camera technology, I still really like this shot because it fits that exact moment. Nobody knew what was going on. They've been campaigning for over a year, and they got to the first place and they wanted to declare victory, but that was going to have to wait. Pages 216 and 217. This ended up being the last photo that I was going to capture out on the campaign trail. And this is the senator coming back off the stage. Nobody knew what was going on. Really, nobody knew. And some of the things that they talked about after the fact was, let's set up for a morning victory rally. If they declare us victorious, we're going to hold a rally before we leave Iowa. That ended up not happening either. What's cool in the image, again, it has the stage, and then it has on camera beyond this point, and that was the main area. But this was one of the only times that the senator actually acknowledged my existence while I was out there. He came in, and the first thing he said through the door is, when did we get a second photographer? Brian being the first, and me being another one that's on the road. Now, that wasn't a big deal. I just thought it was kind of funny when he's like, when did we get a second photographer? Pages 218 and 219. I started off this chapter with the line, this could be the start of something big or it all could be over just like that. It ended up being over just like that. Not long after the Iowa caucus, the world shut down due to COVID-19. All campaigns came to a grinding halt. There were no more in-person events, no more chances to fly out, and no more pictures to be taken. Inevitably, Joe Biden would go on to win the Democratic nomination before being elected the 46th president of the United States. I like to think in my head that if Bernie had become president, I might have had the chance to be the president's photographer. But this time around, it wasn't meant to be. I have no idea what tomorrow will bring. I don't know where photography will take me. Maybe it will take me on the campaign trail once again. Maybe I will end up the president's photographer. But for now, I'm thankful for the experience, the images I captured, and the journey ahead. Pages 220 to 225. Photography notes. So what you're seeing in this section are all the images that are in the book. You're going to see where it says Ames, Iowa, September 8th, 2019, and you're going to see the photos. It's going to show you what page they're on. It's going to give you the exact time it was taken down to the second. You have shutter speed, aperture, ISO, you have the lens used, and you have the camera body that is used. I wanted this section in here because I know there's photographers who are going to look at this book and they always ask to know your settings. And where settings don't always matter, because you're not going to be able to replicate the settings that I had in your situation because every situation is different, I do find it to be interesting information that you can be like, you know what? Picture on page 16 is this, and wow, it was done at that aperture. That's interesting. Or you use that camera. So that's why these notes are here for the next couple of pages, and I hope you enjoy what's here because it's kind of like a contact sheet. It's like a cheat sheet, how it was taken, where it was taken, and how it's done. So I hope you enjoy this section. Pages 226 and 227. Acknowledgements. There are a lot of people I want to thank, need to thank, and probably will forget to thank. So please don't get offended if you're not personally thanked, or get offended because that's up to you. That's a joke, by the way. I figured I needed to spell that out more clearly for the people who don't know me. The people who do know me, they get it. First, I want to thank my mom, dad, and brother Jason for putting up with me. I want to thank all the teachers who encouraged me as well as those who did not. Thank you to my early mentors, you know who you are, who took the time to review my work and answer my questions. Thank you to the Einstein of photography, Bruce Bennett, for inspiring the 15-year-old me to pursue hockey photography. Thank you to Rusty Kennedy for sitting with a 16-year-old me and talking photography on the Flyers bench hours before the puck dropped. Thank you to Alan Lichter for allowing me to unbox and sniff test gear in the store when I started Fronos Photo. Thank you to the Fronos Photo community for supporting me since 2010. Thank you to the Bernie Sanders campaign staff and digital team. Thank you to Stephen Eckert for joining me on the road and documenting our 48-hour sprint. Thank you to everyone who supported the Kickstarter. And finally, thank you to me. Thank you for being you and dancing to the beat of your own drum, even when it wasn't the popular thing to do. Continuing on to the bottom of the page, Bernie by Jared Polin. Text and photographs, copywritten 2021, Jared Polin. Forward, copywritten 2021, Jane O'Mara Sanders. Photographs on page 8, copywritten Ryan Hartford. All rights reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced in any manner in any media or transmitted by any means whatsoever, electronic or mechanical, including photocopying, film or video recording, internet posting, or any other information storage and retrieval system, without the prior written permission of the author. I'm the author, so you gotta ask me. First edition, 2021. ISBN 978-0-578-96192-7. Designed by Bonnie Bryant Design. Printed and produced by EBS, Verona, Italy. You can find me at fronosphoto.com, youtube.com/fronosphoto, at Jared Polin on Instagram, and my personal website, jaredpolin.com. Thank you very much for listening. Jared Polin, Fronos Photo. ocasio-cortez.com. See ya.